All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Show this out, show this out, show this out. It's Friday night. Law of One. Friday night. Oh, let me take this banner down so you guys can see me. I have this banner overlay up over here, and I forgot to take it down. There we go. Let me put myself up into full screen here so you guys can see me. Okay, so it's Friday night. Welcome, everybody. Who's in the audience here? I see Penny. I see who else? Cody. I see Denise. If you're out there, you got to say hello. Otherwise, I won't know that you're here. I just see numbers, and that's it. Okay. So it's Friday night. So let's start out with I'm going to put an overlay up on the screen here, or the banner up on the screen here. This coming Sunday. Today's Friday for me, so wherever you are in the world, you can figure that out. It's 3 p.m. Friday night for me in West Coast America time. Sunday. This coming Sunday for me, 2 days from now. Today is Friday the 7th. On Sunday, the 9th at 5 p.m. West Coast America time on Broadcast Team Alpha. I will be on there for a 1-hour interview that we filmed last Monday, talking about the Law of One and explaining Ascension and the Law of One and everything that goes entails that entails. So if you guys follow me already, then there probably won't be anything new. But I also cover some of the stuff that's in my book. So you are going to get a little bit of stuff that you may or may not have already heard. But if you're brand new, you should tune in there because you'll get the synopsis of the Law of One and everything that I don't cover here because we're in session. What are we on? Session 54 or 55 or something like that of the 106 sessions right now. And this is the second run through. I did it back in 2017 to 2021 or 2020, 2 years and 10 months to do all 106 sessions. Now I've started over, 95 weeks ago because we're in week 95. So that's kind of cool. You guys will have to take a look at that. So let me put it up on the screen. There's the URL, or you could just go to YouTube and then look up Broadcast Team Alpha, or you can go on Facebook, go to my page, and there is a link there that you can click on that'll take you over to that page on YouTube. I don't know exactly where else it's going to be live. He said it was live in a bunch of different places. Like me, he also posts on an MP3 broadcast out to the whole world. So wherever you guys listening to a podcast, you can listen to, I'm sure, a Broadcast Team Alpha on whatever app that you're on. If not, you'll have to get a hold of Augie or go to the YouTube channel and find out the links there to get an RSS number so that you can put it in to your whatever app that you use to get your MP3 file. My show is live around the world on MP3 file on podcast. And for that, if you want to listen to that and your app doesn't already have me on there, you can go to www.Orion Rising, OrionRising.podbean, podbean.com. That'll take you to the website where I broadcast my MP3 file from, and the RSS number is there. You can copy that, paste that into your app. There's a place where you can do that in your app because the company who created your app doesn't want you leaving their app to listen to my podcast. So they'll accept the RSS number, and all of my files from the website that I broadcast from will automatically download into your app, and you'll be able to listen to all, I think we're almost at 500 episodes from the MP3 file. Orion Rising today is the 7th of June. So Orion Rising has been on the air for 7 years, and I have over 1,000 episodes. But the only place you can find those, because YouTube deplatformed me 2.5 years ago, so they deleted over 500 episodes. So the other 500 episodes since then, so I have over 1,000 episodes. You'll have to go to Facebook and go to Orion Rising, the page, not the group. That is mine. Both of those are mine, but the archives are on the page, and you can scroll back and listen to every single show that I've ever broadcast under this name, Orion Rising. I've been on the air doing a podcast for 8 years, but as of today, Orion Rising is 7 years old, so we are on season 8 as of today. Happy birthday, Orion Rising. Okay, so that's kind of exciting. So we got a lot of things going on today. On this Friday is literally season 8 is beginning because Ryan Rising is now 7 years old. We were on the air for 7 seasons, and this is season 8 beginning. The year 8 is beginning, so that's kind of cool. So Sunday I will be on in the chat on YouTube to answer questions. If you hear that in any other place around the world from Broadcast Team Alpha, I won't be there to answer any questions in the live chat. However, if you guys have any questions, you can always contact me at Facebook or go to the Messenger for the Law of One chat class chat in Messenger, or message me on Facebook, or you can go to my YouTube channel under my name, Leonard O'Neill, and you can message me there, or you can send a message to me, I believe, at Podbean, or you could get a hold of somebody who can get a hold of me. Those of you out there who are in the industry, you know how to get a hold of me. You guys can get a hold of me. So, okay. So, Cassie, welcome. Welcome. It looks like you're back from your hiatus. Cassie was on hiatus for a while there. She was on sabbatical, not because she was like researching a book, but she was traveling around and seeing her family and having fun. And I haven't got to talk to you and find out all the good, cool things you did while you were doing that. Okay. Rick, welcome from down under. So yeah, Sunday, 5 p.m. West Coast America time. I will be on Broadcast Team Alpha for a 1-hour interview that we filmed this last Monday. That'll be on there, but I will be in the chat to answer questions if you guys have any questions in the chat. Those of you who are listening to me now all around the world, I'm not sure where the MP3 file goes out to. I'm hoping to get that. If so, I will get that and add that into the description that it will be posted, at least where I'm going to share it on Sunday. I've already posted it on my page and different pages on Facebook. So I will post. And then if you guys don't want to go to YouTube or Facebook to listen or watch the podcast and you want to hear it on your MP3 file, I'm going to try and get that from Augie, because I know that he broadcasts like I do out to the world on MP3. Okay. So what's that? Rick said, oh, is it in early? I just woke up right now. Yeah, I know. No. I came on right at 3 p.m. my time. So it's not early. I just like Penny was talking about being on time finally. And I said, I've been going live at 3 p.m. on Friday night for 8 years now, as of today. Happy birthday, Orion Rising. So for 7 years that I've been broadcasting under this name, I've been going live. Well, actually, that's not exactly true. The first season, we went at 5 p.m. And then halfway through the first season, we lowered it to 4 p.m. By season 2, I lowered it to 3 p.m. And every time I changed where I was broadcasting, everyone else who was trying to broadcast over me also changed to be live when I was live. And so I literally, and even when I did a show on Wednesdays, they were doing the same thing, and we moved the show around to find out when. And for whatever reason, everybody believes that I have the optimum time slot. Whatever I'm on live, I'll look and nobody will be on live on, like, say, Saturday at 2 p.m. I'll start going live at Saturday at 2 p.m. and everybody will start going live at Saturday at 2 p.m. after I've done 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. Everybody will be live on the same time that I'm live. And I've changed that on purpose over the years, because I used to do 3 or 4 shows a week. And I did that as a test. And every time I moved my show to a different day and a different time when nobody was on, everybody else would move to try and fill the same time slot. I thought that was hilarious, right? But I just decided that no matter what, this time slot, I'm not changing it. And people still try to go live right now. People who were supposedly friends of mine go live to try and be live at the exact same time that I'm live, even though they were like, oh, I would never do that to you. And now almost every single person who said that is doing it. I just laugh. I just still do my thing. I don't really care. Okay, so Rick said I forgot him in the Northern Territory, so it's 30 minutes different from Queensland. Yeah, I know that you guys, there's like, I don't know what the time zones are there, but I know that there's different time zones, so that's funny. So you got to get used to the new time zone, Rick. That's like here in the United States. I just found out on, I don't remember what the game show was. There was a game show I clicked on and was listening to last night, and I don't remember which one it was. And they were talking about the time zones here in the United States. Currently, we have 5 time zones. We have Eastern, we have Central, we have Mountain, we have, I another one in there somewhere, and then we have West Coast, and then we have Alaska and Hawaii. But originally, I didn't know this. Originally, here in the United States, like in the 1940s, there was 144 time zones in the United States, and they changed them all and grouped them all together into these large time zones. I was unaware of that. I just assumed that these were time zones they just added as we had migrated from the East Coast to the West Coast. But apparently there was a whole bunch of chopped up time zones, all 144. I was like, what? I rewound it and heard that again. And they were like, even the people who read it were like, what? That is insane. And they did the same thing. They assumed it's always been these time zones. Apparently not. Apparently there was outrageously crazy time zones. That's horrible. Right? Denise said that's terrible. Yeah. Okay. So, let's get into the Law of One. So happy birthday, Orion Rising. 7 seasons passed. We're on season 8 now. As of today, show 1, season 8. I just don't write that in the description anymore. I used to. Now I just do episode number, and that's it. Okay, so happy birthday, Orion Rising. My book, I'm still waiting. I got to contact them now because I'm still waiting for them to draw up the cover images for me to look at. And I could have sworn they said 7 to 10 days. It's been almost 21 days now. It'll be 21 days on Tuesday that they've had it. So I'm going to email them. Well, I don't think they work on weekends, but I'll try it anyway. And I'll get an email probably back on Monday. I could have swore that's what she said. I don't think she said 7 to 10 weeks to put up a freaking picture that I'm sending them to just add a title. I could do that myself and send it to them. If they're taking that long, I might get on my computer and do just that and make up my own picture and then send it to them and go, that's what I want. So that's crazy, right? So I got to email them and figure that out. But you know what? All kinds of craziness is happening. I ordered some vitamins from Swanson, the vitamin Swanson vitamins, and I like their vitamins. They usually have a lot of good natural vitamins. So I ordered it, but then during this COVID hit, right after COVID hit, all of a sudden when I would order stuff, it would come from, say, the Central Valley of Southern California and be mailed up here. Then all of a sudden looks like they were, all companies were trying to keep the economy running. So when I ordered something from California, it came from Pennsylvania or Michigan or somewhere back east. So I got used to the idea that it was going to take, about a week before it would get here. And then they send it FedEx, and I have 2 family members. I used to have 3 family members that work for FedEx. So I'm not trying to throw rocks at FedEx because my family literally has been working there for 25 years, right? My son's there, my brother and his wife, they met at FedEx. And so they've been together for over 25 years. And she's retired from there and doing other things. My brother still works for FedEx. So I'm not trying to throw rocks at them, but they've dropped the ball several times. I'll order stuff. They did this with Chewy for the cat food, where it'll go around in circles for 3 or 4 days in a couple of states. And because I'm tracking it, right? And I'll look at it every day. Where's my stuff? And I'm like, well, why is it back in Minnesota? And now why is it in Texas? And now why is it back in Minnesota 2 days later? And now why is it in Wyoming? And they're sending it from hub to hub to hub to hub, and it's not coming out here. So I ordered some vitamins, and they said it was supposed to be here in 7 to 10 days. So at the 21-day mark, which was 2 days ago, I contacted Swanson and said, look, you guys, it's not your guys' fault. I bought the vitamins from you, but you use FedEx, and this thing took 14 days to get to California. And then it was supposed to go from Southern California to Stockton, and it sat there now for over a week in transit. That literally for 7 days, it couldn't make it 100 miles. So obviously it's been lost. So I would like to have my vitamins, please. So they resent it, and they're like, well, we can send it to somebody else. And I'm like, look, I don't want to throw rocks at FedEx, right? But I just want to get it here. So they sent it here and got it here in 2 days. And I'm like, so you could do that, but you choose not to, and it takes like 2 weeks for it to get here. But when somebody complains, you get it here in 2 days, right? I'm like, okay, whatever. But I got my vitamins. So that's annoying. So crazy things have been going on is my point. And when you're out here in California now, you might as well be in Hawaii, because this place is literally the stronghold of these crazy progressives. And they've cut off themselves from the world, except for with oil, which they are in fact getting from our enemies. and having it shipped here in container ships, which cost all kinds of money and burn up all kinds of stuff for the atmosphere, which these same progressives are saying we can't have a carbon footprint yet. Instead of pulling oil out of the water here in California off the coast where we have a ton of oil, or on land, they're banning that, and they're buying oil from China, from Venezuela, and from the Middle East, the same people that they claim are terrorists and they don't want anything to do with. And they're literally shipping it and sailing it all the way into the San Francisco Bay to the port of Oakland to offload it and get it to the refineries, and then they charge us $2 per gallon more than any other gas price in the continental U.S. And not a joke. We have the highest gas prices, even higher than Hawaii here in the state of California. So they've cut themselves off from the rest of the world, and there's no pipeline coming from any oil companies in the United States to California because they don't want any oil from the United States. So they would rather get it from overseas. You got to love the weird hypocrisy of these people who are like, we got to worry about the world and the ice caps are melting because of all of the carbon footprint. Meanwhile, they have a big tanker that gets a half a mile per gallon of gasoline that's burning up all this fuel coming across from thousands and thousands of miles through the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, and sometimes the Suez and the Panama, and then coming all the way up the coast past Mexico and everybody all the way up here to California just to get gasoline when we have oil refineries sitting 10 miles off the coast, just sitting there collecting rust. You got to love that, right? They're worried about the carbon footprint. And the same people are traveling around in their own private jets, and they're buying gasoline from the other side of the planet that they have to ship in. It takes 2.5 months to get one ship over here because they only go about 17 miles an hour, right? That's about 8 knots. That's insane. Okay. All right. So, yeah, you got to love the hypocrisy of these people. They're like, everybody's got to have an electric car. Again, the electric car is literally all of the batteries from the electric car and all of the computer components come from China. They're the only people who have the rare earth elements to create all of that stuff. So the very people who they're claiming are bad for our business because they're trying to take over the world. They're saying to everybody, you can no longer buy fossil fuels, right? But yet they're getting fossil fuels from outside the country, or outside of the country from the other side of the world. And they're saying we got to get on electricity, but they need the fossil fuels because 80% of all electricity in the United States and anywhere else in the world, for that matter, currently, comes from fossil fuels still to this day. Okay, so it's not like we're generating enough electricity for this giant grid that they're trying to get ramped up. And here's one of the questions that somebody asked, and I'll get off my political point, but I asked, what's going to happen when all these batteries start needing to be recycled because we're burning through like 8 or 12 batteries per car, which are the same one car battery that you use for your combustion engine car right now. You'll be using 12 of those, and those go bad after about 4 or 5 years. They have to be, they're hazmat material. They have to be taken out and disposed of. Where are all those going to go when we have 40 million people just in the state of California that we're trying to get all on electric cars, and 360 million Americans that we're supposed to get on all electric cars? What are we going to do with all those batteries? And we're going to make China probably about $18 trillion a year richer by sending us new batteries the whole time. And you can't recycle batteries like everybody thinks you can, like everything else. It's toxic waste. So they have to do something with the toxic waste, and nobody has an answer for that. That's one question. Question number 2 is, if they decide that everybody has to have an electric car, all the people like me that live in an apartment complex around the entire United States, how are we going to plug our cars in? Are they going to pay for the companies who own these places to dredge up the ground and add in special wires and breakers for all of these charging stations that they're going to put in every single car slot? Or are they expecting us to start drawing these electric cords across the parking lot when everybody's going to be running over all day and all night while we're trying to plug in? Or do they expect that we're going to have to get in our car, drive downtown, go and park and sit for an hour and a half waiting for the battery to charge up every single day? That's a question that people are starting to ask that nobody out there in the world is thinking about when they're like, we need to have electric cars. That only works if you own a house to where you can plug your car in your own garage. Anybody else that has that, we don't have the grid for that. So now, if you're saying we're going to do that, then we have to have a security box so that people can't steal your or cut your cord in your vehicle, because that's what you could do to really piss somebody off. Let's say that we have to have a security box that you have a key for or a combination for, and hope that people don't come and start breaking into all of those. So that you can have a plug to plug in your car in front of your house. Then you got to turn your car alarm on, because what if you have doing that and somebody comes over and does something to it? So now there's a security issue, not to mention that now they have to bring and run cords underground. They have to run wires underground and fuse boxes and big boxes, transformer boxes to run these plug-in things. And they have to do it in every single at every single apartment complex across the entire nation of the United States if they're going to convert everybody over. Now you're adding 100 times or 1,000 times the draw of electricity to the power grid, which they have a hard time keeping turned on now as it is. So how is all of this going to happen? How are we going to create the electricity for all of this? Who's going to pay for putting in all of these electric cords and security for these electric cords and insure them? And then what is the health effects of having all of that power running at all times everywhere under the ground and going into everybody's car all over every apartment complex? So when you walk out and walk through the parking lot, you're going to have 100 cars you have to walk by that's going to have a 220 plug being plugged in, and there's going to be power running. Now, what most people say, well, that doesn't make any difference. The Bay Area Rapid Transit is an electric run subway train, the train system that works in the San Francisco Bay Area. A buddy of mine who's deceased now worked for them for 20 years, 25 years. And he said that when everybody, because of being on these electric trains, being polarized by the ions in the air that are charged with electricity, everybody that works for that company and retires dies of cancer. All of them die of cancer after they're being retired. It's usually they don't make it 5 years. So now we're going to have that scenario going on across where you're sleeping, where you're eating, where your children are, and nobody's doing an EPA investigation into the possibility that electric current is going to be so intense that you're going to have problems with your DNA. Okay, nobody's looking into these things. These are the kind of questions that I ask. Okay, because I've heard stories about this kind of thing. Let's say that was an exaggeration and not everybody dies of cancer. It's to the point where there's enough people that are dying from cancer that the people who work there do the math on how much money do I make doing this, and is it worth my life? Because there's a high probability that doing this and being exposed to this much electricity is going to kill me a few years after I'm dead. So I have to make sure that I take care of my family. That is an actual conversation and thought process that everyone that works for that company has in their head and talks about openly. And I've seen that with people who are employees hanging out with my buddy who's now deceased. He didn't die from that, although it might have been part of it. But then again, he was in the Gulf War and had all kinds of problems from going over there and working for the federal government during the Desert Storm. So no one's really sure whether it was electricity for 25 years or all the stuff that he had going on when he was building and creating ordnance, including nuclear stuff when he was working for the government. So it could be all of that combined. Okay, so that's just insane to think about all of those things that nobody's addressing, and they're just running headlong into. And why is it that the same people who are supposed to be about freedom for America is running headlong into the only people who create these cars and these batteries are in fact the Chinese Communist Party? So we're going to convert everybody into America, where the only people that are making the cars besides Tesla are those people. And everyone who's making the cars now, all these car companies over here that are American car companies, 80% of all the parts are coming from China. So if the Chinese aren't making the cars, they're shipping all of the batteries and computer components over to the car companies who are making these cars. So no matter how you look at it, and then if you're gonna create more windmills, 98% of all windmills used in the United States are created in China. And when you look at the solar panels, 82% of all solar panels used in the United States is created in China. So no matter how you look at it, turning everybody onto electricity is going to take all the money out from the United States, and it's all going to go over to China. And China is going to be completely in control of our electric grid in our cars. What happens if they have a computer component in there that's their own low jack and they can just turn it off or turn off our grid? I'm just saying, I don't like that whole idea, but nobody's even addressing this stuff. So you get what you pay for, you get what you wish for, you get what you vote for. So you guys just remember what I'm saying now. If the world does get cuckoo cachoo, and then all of a sudden you're driving your car and all the cars turn off, and then you're like, what's going on? And then you get a notification on your phone that all your cars were turned off because the Chinese are about to invade and they have control of your car. So when that day happens, right? So, yeah. So Rick said, Leo, what's this about oil not being bought in the US dollars anymore? Yeah, well, okay. So, all right. So soon in changing to gold currency to buy oil, I heard it's all over. The people are thinking it's no good. Well, some of it, Rick, is the people that are turning to gold. The reason that people are starting to turn to gold is because they don't trust the American dollar. The American dollar is currently worth, and that means your dollar too, because you guys around the world, we're either following the sterling, the pound from England, or we're following the euro, or we're following the American dollar, or we're following the yen. That's the currency of the realm on this planet. It's one of those, and it shifts depending on who's in power. Right now, the European dollar, the euro, the American dollar, and the Chinese yen are only worth about 5 cents compared to what they used to be worth 45 years ago. 5 cents. If you take $1 right now and go back in time 45 years, that dollar is that you have in your hand, a paper money, is worth 95 cents more than it is currently. Okay. And if you go back to the 70s, it's, a gallon of gas was 25 cents. A pack of cigarettes was 33 cents. A gallon of gas right now is $6.50 here in the state of California. And that's low compared to what it normally is this time of year. And a pack of cigarettes is over $10. So literally, when people go, well, that's just inflation. I don't think you understand economics. You should look that up. Inflation and economics. You should look up why. So if a pack of cigarettes was 33 cents in 1974, and in 2024 they're $10, that means that literally your dollar that only charged 33 cents for a pack of cigarettes is now worth so much less that it takes $10 to buy the same pack of cigarettes. That's what that means. Okay. And then if you go back even further, it was worth even less, because it was literally like a nickel for a beer. Right. And at that time, when I was a kid in the 80s, it was $1 for one beer in a bar. Now it's like $10 for a beer, $7 to $10 for one beer. Okay. That literally tells you that when I was 18 compared to now, the American dollar is worth crap. So what's happening is, first of all, everyone is assuming that America is going to die because of what's happening right now in the world and in America. And other countries, including yours, is having the same issues. Because you guys voted for the people that you put in charge, they are destroying the countries in the world because they're trying to create a scenario. It's the Hegelian dialectic. Create a scenario so that they can then create their one world government and get rid of all other governments, and the rich elite people will then control that government. They already control all the governments, but they want to have it under one banner so it's easier to control everybody, because then you have an identification that's worldwide. So what's happening is that people are not trusting the American dollar or the euro anymore, or the pound sterling. So they're starting to say we need to go back to a gold standard because it's tangible. Because here's the issue. When your dollar in Australia or the American dollar is worth less money, gold is worth more. That shows you the inflation. Gold is a standard that is normal. So gold prices go up and down. And the reason that they go up and down is determined by what the currency of the realm value is. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. That becomes worth more money when the dollar is worth less. And that's when you know the dollar is worth less in your country, especially in the United States, you all of a sudden the commercials come on and they're like, there's a big debt and you need to start buying gold. That means that the gold that they're trying to sell to you currently is probably worth, instead of say $800 an ounce, like now, it's currently like $2,800 an ounce. So they're trying to get you to buy it at the high price, because gold goes up when the American dollar goes down. So that's how the price works. That's how precious metals are precious metals. Those prices don't go up and down because the market is the value of whatever currency is the currency of the realm. Okay. And so those things, an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. But if the euro is not worth a dollar, it's only worth 78 cents. The ounce of gold is now going to be another couple $100 per ounce. Okay, you need to take an economics course to find that out. So people who have the oil are no longer wanting to sell it for dollar prices of the American dollar or the euro. So they don't trust that money is going to be there. So they don't want that money, because if they have that money and the money tanks, they lose. But if they have gold and you give them gold and all the money crashes, their gold is worth more money. So if you have gold in your possession and you bought it when gold was $800 an ounce, you haven't gotten any more gold, but it's now worth $2,800 an ounce. If the currency of the realm crashes, that gold is going to go up, 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 up. So if you're selling your oil to people, governments, and the United States, Germany, or whatever, and you're no longer thinking currency is worth a shit, and you want gold only, now they have to buy gold. It's just like Bitcoin. That's what they tried to do with Bitcoin. So now they have to buy gold and give you the gold. You have the gold, and no matter whose currency is the currency of the realm, your gold is going to be worth the highest amount that it is for whatever depending on the currency. That's why we used to have the gold standard before this fake money was created, because then you had all of your money was backed up in actual gold sitting somewhere in the United States. They had it supposedly at Fort Knox. So you only could print the amount of dollars that would reflect how much gold that you had. But they wanted more money because they were greedy. So they had to get off of gold, silver, and precious metals and get on this carte blanche, just printing money. And they print it, and then you owe it to them. Okay, you don't know that, but you do. It happens in your country. You guys are on either your own banking system, or you're on the European, or you're on the English. You're on somebody's federal banking system. If you're not on the American dollar and you have your own dollar, then you guys probably have your own federal banking system. And that's just a fake bank that doesn't have any money in it. They just print it whenever they want, and they keep track of it because your tax money, you owe them now for that money. And then they just print it and put it out there into the world. And they don't even print it most of the time now. They just electronically go, we have $1 trillion. And they start electronically dispersing that money. And then they charge people by giving them loans, and they charge people interest. And that's how they make money back. That's what they do with you with their taxes. So companies who now are getting smarter, they're either taking Bitcoin or they're getting gold, because gold is tangible. They can take the gold and stockpile it underground in safes and guard it. No matter what the currency of the world is that's printed on paper, gold is still gold. Precious metals are still precious. So that's what's happening. You have this group called BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, where they're trying to start using the Chinese yen, and people are spending that as the global currency, and not the American dollar, not the British sterling, and not the euro. So because of that, it's shifting, the power source is shifting to the Chinese. Well, America's playing right into their hand with everything I just said prior to, with this whole conversion into electricity and all of the electricity and the components for all of that coming out of China. It's just enriching them even more. That's another reason why I brought that up. I don't know if you guys have any other questions, but you should take an economics class. Reese, welcome. You should, and Peter, welcome. You should take a economics world, global economics especially, class and learn about the stuff I'm telling you about. They used to teach it in schools, and it used to be a prerequisite that you had to learn growing up, starting at like 8 years old. But they stopped doing that in this country. I don't know about, obviously they must not teach it to you because you're in Australia and you don't know about it, right? That means they're not teaching it to you either. They stopped teaching it here, but I was at the last bit where I was learning about it. And then since then continued learning about it. That's why I wrote a book about how to get out of debt, surviving the 21st century. But when people read it, they don't, because it takes work. You have to actually use your mind and free yourself and realize what's going on in the world and understand that. Literally in the 1903, 1904, maybe 1905 at the latest, Henry Ford is famous. I don't know the exact date because I haven't looked it up for a while. He actually stated back then, if the population, if the average American person right now understood how global economics works, there would be a revolution. They would overthrow the government. That was more than 120 years ago, or approximately 120 years ago. Nothing has changed. And that was while we were on the gold standard before we got off of that. Because it was 1948 in the United States when they abolished the gold standard and went on to this federal banking system where they just print money. It's all fake. It's all they just do it. And then they say, you guys owe us double. You owe us the money that we're printing, and then it takes money to print the money. So you owe us, if they print $1 trillion, then America owes the federal government $2 trillion to pay for that $1 trillion, no matter what they do with the money. And then they'll take that $1 trillion that they print, and then they'll loan it to banks and to people and to other countries and whatever they can. And then they'll make another $2 trillion on top of that in interest. And then they'll make a $2 trillion from you. So they print the money, put it out there, and then they rake in money and they make 4 times what it costs them to print it. And you pay for the whole thing. And then they spend it on other things or put it in their own pockets. And that happens all the time in every government. You can look into things and find out, where did the whole $1 trillion just went missing? Nobody seems to know where it's at. When you ask the oversight, they're like, we're looking into that, sir. And then you ask them again, they go, we're still looking into that, sir. And eventually, because the short attention span of everybody, because they swipe as quick as they can after 5 seconds on TikTok, they forget about it after the news cycle. So 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, no one remembers that there was a whole $1 trillion that went missing. Where do you think all that money went? It's not missing. It's just you don't know where it is, and the government's not telling you where it is. They're appropriating it and using it for black ops, or it's going in their bank accounts. They're taking the money and it's theirs. Now they're hoarding it. And because they own everything, they go, shut up. Otherwise, we're going to come after you for asking questions. We're going to put you in jail because you're asking questions, and you get scared. Or they just go, here's $1 million. Sign this non-disclosure agreement. You can never talk about it. And if you do, you get executed, or we put you in prison for the rest of your life and your family. And then somebody just takes the money because they're greedy, and then they go about their lives and they just laugh. And who cares? I got mine. That's the truth of what happens here. Okay, that's the truth. That's what's actually going on in every government. They're ripping you off, taking your money, charging you for it, and keeping it all. That's why I just put that thing out the other day, and it's a couple of years ago, right after COVID. So it's from like 2022, where Russell Brand is on a talk show talking about it. He's reading the statistics, and he's saying America paid $2 trillion to all of the pharmaceutical companies to create these vaccines. The pharmaceutical companies then charged everybody for the vaccines. Oh, we got it for free. No, the federal government gave them money for it, and then they charged your medical. If you didn't have medical, then it was paid for by the federal government, and those people got the money from the taxpayers to pay for that. Okay, so then they took all the profits after they got paid $2 trillion to create a vaccine. They got paid. And who knows how much of it cost them to make the vaccine. Probably didn't cost them $2 trillion, so they kept that money. Then they stood to make, I did the math during COVID, and if the shot cost just $500 per shot, that doesn't mean you paid for that because you got it for free or you got your medical company paid them for it. Okay, so you might have paid a copay of like $5, maybe $20, but the shot cost about $500. If you extrapolate out $500 per person for every person that was supposed to get the shot worldwide for 7.9 trillion people at 500, you're looking at $500 trillion. Now, if only 1/10 of the people got that, so if only 1 trillion people got it, that's still $5 trillion. If I'm doing that right, or five, it's still, yeah. 500 times 1 trillion is 500 trillion. Okay. So that was what they stood to gain in profit. So now let's say that it was even less, because in the United States, at first they were trying to tell you that 74, more than 75% of the Americans got the shot. Now they're coming out and saying that it was less than 18% of the total population actually got a shot. Okay. So, but even if it's only 20% of 350 million, that's still a couple of million at $500 per. That's $500 million for one shot that those pharmaceutical companies all got a piece of for one shot. And then they had most people who got a shot got 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Okay. So that means they made probably $4 or $5 trillion on the United States alone, not to mention the rest of the population of the world. Okay. So I said that they stood to gain $124 trillion, and they got to divvy that up between the big 8 pharmaceutical companies worldwide that got all the money. Okay. The gross domestic product of the United States of America, the richest country that makes the most money on the entire face of the earth for 1 year, is $2 trillion. 2. Total profit for the richest country on the earth currently is $2 trillion. And they stood to gain in 2 years a piece of $125 trillion. And they didn't pay back any government for any of the money that they were given to create the shots. So they got trillions to make the shot, and then they got hundreds of trillions, or a piece of it, 50, 60 trillion a piece profit. And they're still getting people to get shots and making money off of it. Okay. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. Think about that. So the same thing is going on with these electric cars. Who is pushing the electric cars? These progressives around the world. Well, who stands to gain 87% of the profit? China. Because the rare earth element that it takes to make the batteries, 95 to 98% of it comes out of China. It's not mined anywhere else. That's just the battery. And then if you have a touch screen, same thing. And then if you have, and then if you have a computer in there, same thing. So no matter whether you have a car company in Australia that's making it, all the components to make that electric car are coming from China, being shipped into your country and put in the cars under the name of whoever it is that's making your cars. Whether they're British cars, American cars, German cars, whatever. All of those people around the world that are making those batteries in those cars, the electric cars, all of those components are coming from China. So if China is supposed to be so bad and a communist country, why is it that half of the governmental systems are pushing for that product that they know no one else in the world makes? You can get fossil fuels everywhere on the planet. Just about every country has fossil fuels they can pump out of their own ground of one kind or another. The Brazilians stopped using gasoline, petroleum, because they didn't have any oil over there. But they had natural gas and sugar. So they created their own gasoline from sugar and from natural gas. And they use exclusively, all of Brazil runs on gasoline made from sugar, not from crude oil, because that was the product they had. They were smart enough to do that. So they don't need oil from the Middle East. They don't need oil from Venezuela or America. They don't need that. They're making their own. And a lot of people are taking natural gas and now turning it in, converting it. Over here in the United States, there's a couple of companies that are taking natural gas out of the ground and they're turning it into petroleum so they can make fuel out of it. And they can make oil for lubricant and then make gasoline out of it, because they're worried that the crude oil is going to run out because everybody in the Middle East has it. Well, the same thing has to happen if you're going to compete against the Chinese for profit for making these rare earth minerals. You got to find them someplace, own it, and hopefully find the Australian outback. I'm sure they got to have rare earth materials out there somewhere. Same thing with here in the United States. You just got to have people go and look for them and find them so you can create your own batteries for your own cars. Until that happens, 90% of all profit goes to the Chinese Communist Party, who are trying to take over the world. Okay. So, okay, so that's enough of me being on my soapbox for 45 minutes. How about we start on the law of one today? I apologize for getting that way, but you guys are asking me questions and keeping me on that products and all that. But you need to think about these things. And if you don't take a world economics class or any economics class and any civics classes, you have no idea what any of this entails. And that's what they want you to do. That's why they keep everybody from learning these things, because you have no idea. And you're just on your smartphone and you don't know that most of the particles that it takes, the rare earth elements and everything that it takes to make this and the lithium battery comes from China. So if you have a smartphone, you're like, oh no, I bought my smartphone from a company that is in Australia, or here I bought an American. No, I don't care what you bought. Research all the parts, because if you have a touch screen, those rare earth elements that it takes to make that touchscreen, and if you have a lithium battery, lithium doesn't grow on trees. Okay, you guys aren't mining lithium in Australia unless there's something that I don't know about, that you guys have, your country has started finding lithium out there, and they're making lithium batteries. Because if so, then you have the rare earth elements to be able to make batteries for electric cars. But if you have a touchscreen, you have a smartphone, that means that 87 to 90% of all the components to make that has to come from China. They're making money off of it. That's insane to think about. Okay, I'm going to do a sound check because I'm done on my soapbox talking about politics. Let me do a sound check. You guys let me know if you can hear it okay, and we'll get going here on the law of 145 minutes in, almost an hour in.
May 19th, 1981. 52.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now.
I think electric cars, Denise said, electric cars are just dumb. I think that it is going to be the way of the future, maybe. I think that we should get on to something that's a little bit more cleaner than batteries that are, or electricity that might do damage to our DNA, and then the batteries which are toxic when they're no longer chargeable, because they're not infinite. They don't charge forever. So we either need to come up with better batteries or a different fuel source that's going to be even cleaner. But the idea is sound, but you can't switch over off of fossil fuels before the grid can handle it, and before you figure out the logistics of how is everybody going to be able to charge their vehicle and drive that vehicle. You have to have that stuff figured out before you run headlong into it. In this country, they're running headlong into it. They're like trying to pass laws. Here in the state of California, they're passing laws that says you can't sell a car made that's not an electric car, and they're going to ban all vehicles they're trying by 2032. If they do that, then they're going to force everyone to buy a car that costs $75,000 to $100,000, and people can't own, they don't have enough money to do that. What are they going to do with those people? They don't care. They're going to go take a bus, an electric bus. They're literally taking control of the population and forcing people to be subservient and to exist on their transportation. And they don't care. You either make enough money to buy one of these vehicles, or you go and stand in line and get on a train or a bus. And then we'll have to raise our taxes on you to pay for that. Companies are leaving the state of California, closing their stores because of high crime and because of literally they raised the minimum wage to $20 an hour at fast food restaurants. Fast food restaurants are closing and leaving. There's going to be a ghost town. All the progressive cities are going to have no companies in them anymore. Where are the people going to make money? What are they going to spend money on? They don't care right now because not everybody's leaving yet. But that's what's happening. McDonald's is closing 500 stores in California soon. McDonald's. Because they can't pay their employees. They just like, it's not cost efficient. We can't keep up with $20 an hour. Nobody wants to come to work for us. And then they have to lower the amount of people. And then people aren't wanting to pay for it. I don't go to fast food restaurants in this state anymore. It costs $20 for a freaking burger that used to be $4.99 2 years ago. Not doing that. Not doing it. I can cook my own burger right here. So now they're trying to augment that by forcing those people to raise their prices. And people are starting to cook for themselves now. And I noticed they're lowering prices. I just went to Safeway 2 days ago. And when I walked in there, I looked at the prices and went, these prices are back to where they were before the inflation. But it's sale prices. It's still cheaper because like paper plates. Okay, during COVID, when we were having supply issues, paper plates were $14 for 100 paper plates. They're now $9.99. That's what they were before they went to 14, right? I went over and got some lunch meat because we were out of lunch meat. I normally go to Walmart. I went and got some lunch meat that was $12.99 last year, $9.99. It was $8.99 before COVID. So the stores are losing their business and they're lowering prices because people are going to like Target and Walmart because it's cheaper, and then everybody's cooking at home now instead of going out to restaurants. So what's happening is now people are going to have to start growing their own food next. That's the way it was when I was a kid. And when people came here from like India, they couldn't believe how Americans were so lazy and didn't grow anything and just went to the store and bought everything. You guys are rich. You just don't know you're rich. And that's why I wrote that book about getting out of debt and surviving in the 21st century. I told people, if you're in America, you're not poor no matter how poor you think you are. You're America poor because I'm on Social Security. And the little pittance that I make on Social Security, I'm middle class in almost every country that is not a European country. If I go to what they call the third world, I'm middle class to above there on something that I can't even live on in this state. Cannot live on the money that I make by myself in the state of California. If I go to Arizona, I can't live there either because they charge you like 3 times. You have to be able to come up with, and you have to make 3 times more than your rent. You have to show proof that you make 3 times more than your rent. Even if you make enough to pay the rent, right, on your Social Security, it's not 3 times the amount, so they won't rent to you, okay? And there's a bunch of states that are like that. But if I move to Egypt, I'm upper middle class on the little pittance that I have here. If I go to the Philippines, the same. So if you go outside of these European-run oligarch countries, you can survive on $1,200 to $1,500 American a month. You're rich. So people that are here that make $100,000 and they think they're poor because they live in an area where houses cost almost $1 million and they can't get a loan to buy that house. That's the cost of living. That's rich people raising the prices for everything. During World War II, and then I'll get back to Raw. I apologize for this, but the last point. During World War II, the economy in Germany got so bad after the war that somebody who would go to buy a pair of tennis shoes, sneakers, in the store in 1940 would have cost about 25 cents. Okay? Of the Deutschmark. By the end of the war, it cost 800,000 Deutschmarks for the same pair of shoes. Do you understand that? Or they might have been using the franc. No, because that's the French. So they were using the Deutschmark, I believe, whatever the German money was. So that's what happens when an economy gets blown up. Okay? That's what's happening without a war of buildings being annihilated and people dying around the world currently. Okay. So when the prices get higher, here's my point, if people start learning the skills, I also wrote a book about that, survival / prepping / survival for beginners. If you start making your own stuff instead of relying on going to a store and buying it, making your own clothes, growing your own food, cooking your own foods, get back to the way people lived in this country until 1978. The entire time prior to that, people made their own leather, made their own clothing, grew crops and animals to cook and eat, to kill, to slaughter, to cook and eat, and the crops to eat. All of that, that's how they survived. That's how they survived. And they spent the time, because then, well, I have to have a job. No, you have to have a job because you spend all of your money. You need to get money because you buy everything from everybody else. If you created your own stuff and cooked your own food and grew your own food, you wouldn't need all that money to go to the stores. But you don't know that because you've never taken an economics class and you don't know the history of the world and how it works. And you've been not taught any of the skills that it takes to be able to sew, stitch, create. And literally, my father made his own leather jacket and vest. My stepfather did the same thing and made scabbards for all of the swords and daggers and stuff that he was using to go to the Renaissance fairs and the Scottish games. Created their own stuff. My grandmother used to make our clothing, our pants, and our shirts on a sewing machine at her house. My mother used to have in the backyard. She used to have a garden. That's why the English still call them a garden, because they used to grow food there. Okay, all of that is what went on. My father kept rabbits in the backyard, and we had chicken a lot, which we thought was chicken. It turned out we were eating rabbits. My father had rabbit cages and bred rabbits. So we had rabbits every year. We had all kinds of rabbits back there, and then they would go missing. And I was young, so I wasn't sure what was happening. What was happening, I found out when I got older, was whenever we didn't have enough money, my father would go and kill a rabbit, skin it, gut it, bring it in. My mom would cook it and tell us that it was chicken. We had no idea that it wasn't chicken, and we would eat it. By the time I was 17 years old, we went over to a friend of my mom's, and they were cooking rabbit. Told us it was rabbit. And I was like, all right, I'll try it. I don't care. I bit into it and realized I'd been eating rabbit my whole life, and I liked it because I thought it was chicken when I was a kid. Okay. So unless you know you're eating rabbit and somebody tells you it's chicken, you're not going to notice the difference unless you've never had it and you're an adult and you have the taste buds to go, this is a little more greasy than chicken. This is kind of a greasy chicken, but it's really good. Rabbit's good. I like rabbit. So my family was poor and grew up growing food and eating that food, and we didn't have to have as much money. So you don't have to have the job that you have if you have land. That's why they're taking that away and making you live in apartments, because you can't, then they tell you can't have plants, you can't grow food, can't have animals, you can't have livestock. Why is that? Because they want you to be stuck on their products. So they control it, and they control you by controlling that product. So if the world gets crappy or you don't do what they tell you to do, then they close the stores. And then you don't have any source for food. And you have no idea how to fish, how to hunt, how to plant crops, how to do any of that stuff, because they've made it illegal for you to do it. And that only these avid hunters and fishermen still do it. I grew up in a family where it was vital that you learned how to sow, you learned how to plant crops, you learned when, you learned why, you learned how to hunt, you learned how to fish, you learned how to do all these things. And I watched my father making leather goods and my stepfather making leather goods. I watched my grandmother cooking, rabbit, my father cooking, getting chickens in the backyard and wringing their neck and cooking a chicken. I grew up watching this stuff. It was normal. Now it's no longer normal, and you guys have no idea how to take care of yourselves. If the world got shitty, you would sit down and starve looking at your cell phone and hoping that something's going to come out of your cell phone. Okay, let's continue with the law of one. Again, I apologize. I've been going on way too long now. Almost made a full hour out of this. All right, here we go.
2.1 Questioner. In the previous session you stated that the other type of experience is the fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies and some within your own galaxy which have learned necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being, and therefore are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft. I would like to ask you, when you say that fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies, and some within your own galaxy, are you stating here that more of the entities in other galaxies have developed the abilities of personality than have in this galaxy for this type of, shall I say, travel? I am using the term galaxy with respect to the lenticular shape of 250 billion stars. Ra, I am Ra. We have once again used a meaning for this term, galaxy, that does not lie within your vocabulary at this time, if you will call it so. We referred to your star system. It is incorrect to assume that other star systems are more able to manipulate the dimensions than your own. It is merely that there are many other systems besides your own. 52.2 Questioner. Thank you. I think that possibly I am on an important point here, because it seems to me that the great work in evolution is the discipline of personality, and it seems that we have two types of moving around the universe, one stemming from disciplines of personality, and the other stemming from what you call the slingshot effect.
Right. So this is actually kind of really cool. And you guys are still talking about the survival. You know what you could do, Cody, you guys are talking about that. Was it Cody that was talking about that? I know Cassie just made a comment about that. So what you guys can do, any of you that are out there, if you guys, there's almanacs that tell you when to plant. Look, I have, my sister just picked this up. Look here, let me show you this. I have this that it's laminated. This little thing is laminated. I just so happened to have moved it. Okay. It's laminated. And literally, this is telling you, I don't know if I can get it to focus. Let me go back to the thing right here. Foraging wild edible foods. Okay. I bought this and it's laminated and it tells you all the foods that you, and it's double sided. So you have this whole side that I'm showing you. Okay. It shows you the plants and this whole side right here. Okay. And it tells you what all the plants are, where they're grown. I can't get it to focus. Where they're grown, and you can get them for whatever area that you live in. And I remember when I moved to Arizona, in the middle of the desert, and my buddy Paul, who's deceased now, but he lived here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I moved out in the middle of the desert, and he said, "Bro, you better figure out what you're going to do for food, because if the world gets shitty, you're going to starve out there." And I was like, "Wait a minute, you know what? Maybe he's right. I should look into this." I looked into wild edibles like this out in the middle of the desert, found out there's more food out there that grows wild than there is in the modern city, because that's untouched by humans. So things grow. Asparagus, like you're seeing here on the front cover, grows wild in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and in avocados, all across there. Nuts, berries, all kinds of stuff grows wild in the middle of the desert. You can eat cactus. I saw that when I was 30, and I was at a buddy of mine's apartments, and we were having a barbecue, and these Mexicans were across the little courtyard right here, and they were barbecuing too. And I watched this Mexican guy pick up a cactus leaf, cut the prickly things off of it, skin some of the skin off of it, slap it on the barbecue, and start cooking it, and picked it up and cut a piece of it and put it on his hamburger and was eating it. I was like, what the hell is he eating? A cactus? And if they all looked at me and started laughing, they're like, "Yeah, you need to try this." And I was like, "I don't know about that. I heard they were poisonous." They're like, "No, come here. Only that stuff that's on the skin, that's on the inside, if you don't cook it, and then it is. So you need to learn about it. But here, come over here." And I put one piece. Oh my God, it was really good. It was very juicy. It was good. They're like, cactuses are mostly watered. They use a certain cactus for sugar and another one for fermenting tequila. So literally, the stuff is out there, and you don't know about it because you have no reason to, because you think you're supposed to have a job, to have cash, or to have electronic money, so that you can go and buy it all from the store, because they don't teach you how to forage for food, grow food, anything. I just watched Aaron Fowler was just talking about and pulled up some potatoes that he grew. I did that in an apartment. I got a planter on my back patio, and I grew potatoes in there. You put them in there. Took a potato, just a little eye, if it starts to grow out, it grows a root, and then it'll grow potatoes. It grows this big stalk that goes up almost 8 feet tall, and you have to wait for that stalk to die, and then you pull out the root, and there's potatoes hanging off of it. And if you pick them early, that's what they call new potatoes, or baby potatoes. They're the small ones. So if you pick them early, you get new potatoes, and then if you let them grow, they get bigger. And so you can just take one russet potato, go and buy a bag of potatoes, take one potato and bury it in the ground and water it, and it will grow, and it will harvest probably 6 or 8 potatoes off of that one potato. You'll pull it out, and the dead carcass, which will be shriveled up from that potato that you first put in the ground, will be there, and it'll look like a lump of poop, and everything else will be hanging off of it, and there'll be potatoes. Okay, so literally you take one potato and you can grow 6 or 8 off of one potato, and sometimes more than that. I grew potatoes on my patio. And then I was growing carrots. We had planters in between my house. I was living in a townhouse, and in between my front door and the next front door, my buddy lived there. There was a whole row in between our houses that was dirt, and they had planters and trees and shrubs and stuff growing. I went and planted carrots in there, because a carrot grows a stalk that comes out that gets about this tall, and it's this green leafy thing, and then literally underneath the ground is the root. You pull it out, and it's a carrot in there. And I went over there one day, and there were all this growing, and I told the guys, the landscapers, don't get rid of those. That's food. I'm growing carrots in there. And they laughed. They were Mexican. They thought, good idea. So I went over one day, and I pulled the carrot out, and I washed it off and started eating it. And he looked at me and went, "Dude, did you just pull that out of that planter?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm growing food in here." His girlfriend was like, "Oh my God, I'm planting food." So with all the whole planters inside these shrubs, we had radishes and carrots and all this stuff growing all the time in there. No one knew about it. People would walk up, you have the prettiest plants. That's because it's actual food. You just have never seen it because you don't know about it, right? My brother-in-law in his backyard put in a whole bunch of planters and put screens over them so that animals couldn't get to them. And he was growing everything back there: watermelon, corn, radishes, tomatoes, all the stuff in his backyard. Same reason, because once you start growing all of that, you don't have to buy it in the store. You can I could hang right here in the corner. I could grow tomatoes in here. You get this stuff and it's cost pennies. You just have to learn. There's almanacs. Let me get back on that point. There's almanacs you guys can buy that will teach you, or you can just look it up on your phone and save it or print it out. Will teach you when to plant wherever you are, wherever you are on the earth. Someone already knows when to plant what crops at what time of the year and when you harvest those crops. And there's crops that grow all year round, most of the time all year round, no matter where you are, even if you're in the middle of a desert. Okay? They grow. You just have to find out what grows in the area that you're in. I was going to plant peanuts. You're in Australia, Rick and Reese. You guys can grow peanuts. They grow really good in desert areas. Peanuts, asparagus, avocado, a few other nuts, hickory, mesquite. You guys, there's a mesquite bean pod that grows. You can either eat the beans out of the mesquite, or you can ground it up into flour and make bread, tortillas, cake, everything that you use flour out of the mesquite. The mesquite, and it grows wild out here in the United States in the deserts, in the southwestern desert, Arizona, Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. We have mesquite trees that grow everywhere, and we use it to smoke our food. Mesquite and what was the other one I just said? There's two of them. Those both have a bean that when it starts getting into fall, the beans from the air blowing, the trees, the weather, the beans will all rattle in there. And everyone's like, yeah, that's just a tree that has these beans on it. Those beans are edible. The only reason we know about that is when people were coming across the plains on the southern side, trying to come to San Diego and San Francisco, going across the south. They were running out of food and flour and stuff when they got out in the middle of those deserts. And the Native Americans that were living there were teaching Americans all the stuff that was growing out in the desert that they could forage for food to survive all the way out to the West Coast. Because they were like, don't stop here, keep going, but we'll teach you what you need to know. Some of that information is still known by the people that live in those areas. So wherever it is that you're living, no matter what the temperate zone is, look up what can grow there and when to plant them. And you get those seeds, or you go and buy them from the store and use the seeds there. Because a lot of times they're outlawing. During COVID, there were states in the Union in the United States that wouldn't allow you to buy seeds. Why would they do that during COVID? Because they didn't want people to grow their own food. They still wanted people to go to the stores and get the food. They were not allowing you in the state of Michigan. It was illegal to buy seeds from a store to grow your own food during COVID. Think about why they would do that. Okay. Oh, this is mine. My sister just saw it because it was on the table. I bought this online. Denise said, where did your sister get that from? She saw this because she was sitting here at the table, and I usually have it underneath the camera. And that's where it was sitting, was on top of the books, which I had piled on the table. And when I picked up the stuff to move the stuff off so we could eat on the table, this fell off the books and I didn't notice it. And I walked away with the books, and my sister picked it up and said, what is this? And she started looking at it, foraging for wild edibles. She's like, oh my God, this is freaking cool. And I said, you should buy one. You can look them up. You should buy one because this is small. And it even has mushrooms, and it tells you all the edible mushrooms that are not poisonous, and even the ones that are, and what you can do with them. It shows you an actual. I used to have a one that was done by a botanist where they drew the plants. These are actual pictures of berries that you're looking at. Here's the cactus I was telling you about. That red bulb that's on the cactus. It won't get it into focus. That red bulb that's on there is a delicacy. It's super sweet. And those only grow at a certain time of the year for the cactus. And you'll find that Mexicans in your area will go and you'll see them. They'll go and be harvested. One day you'll have all these red bulbs. And before they go bad and start to wilt on the cactus, you'll find them that you'll show up the next day and they'll all be cut off. is because the Mexicans know that that's a delicacy. It's really good tasting. They make jelly out of it. And they'll go and cut it off and they'll cook it and eat it and put it in their stews and make jelly out of it. And it costs a lot of money. So some people come by and grab it and make jelly and sell it to other white people. And it just grows wild. You just don't know about it because you don't know about these things. This one, I don't know where I found it. It was online. I just looked it up and I got it off of like Amazon or something and was mailed to me because I can carry this in my satchel. It's so lightweight, and there's enough foraging here for the North American continent to where I can see what the plants are, so I don't inadvertently eat a mushroom cap that'll poison me. And I can see the other plants, berries. These are all berries. So you just got to look them up. I used to have a book, and I left it in my shop when I left my job. I had one in my shop, and it was a book that was done by somebody who drew all the plants. That's the way they used to do it back in the day. And it was this little book that was about 100 pages long, and it was done, look up botany, look up or look up foraging for wild edible foods. That's what I did. And I found one and had it shipped to me, and it's so lightweight, I can shove it into my, look at that, like a road map from back in the day. It folds out this big. And it's double-sided, and it has all the information all the way across, and it explains what's in here. And this is not everything. This is just, most of the stuff that is edible that you can survive on and live on. I keep this stuff around. Usually it's in my satchel, but I was going through my satchel, and I pulled this out, and then I left it out because I keep talking about it when I'm on the air. So this information is out there. There's another book that I don't have out here I would show you. It's in the other room, and I've shown you guys this before. I'm going to go get it. Okay. And that's one of those survival books. I'm going to go get it. I'll be right back. It's one of those survival books that you should have because it tells you remedies and everything. Let me go get it. I'll be right back. Now, I've talked about this before, but it's been a couple years since I brought this one up. I apologize for anybody who just tuned in and went, why is there just a blank screen here? I don't have any association with these people. I'm not getting paid to do a commercial from these guys. Just know that. So this isn't like somebody that's giving me an affiliate that's giving me money, nor is this book, okay? But this book right here, some of you already have this because we talked about it before. This book is entitled The Lost Ways, okay? And it's a big book, but in here is, here's some pictures that show you how to make, I think they're making soap here. Yeah, this is how to make and cut soap is in here. Okay. And that's just where I just flipped to. And it tells you how to cook things on an open fire. Okay. The way they used to cook things back in the day. Cowboys used to cook things over an open fire with cast iron skillets. You should have cast iron. I have 3 cast iron skillets. And I was teaching my sister just last week how to care for them because she didn't know. Look, here's how to make a Dutch oven. Look, and there's drawings. It's drawing of a key, right? What's this? A key? No, it's a drawing of a key. Anybody who's a Pirates of the Caribbean fan, right? And here's how you start making. Look, there's a picture of how to start making a Dutch oven, right? This was in my book, but I didn't give you pictures in my book about survival. And here's how to collect rainwater for drinking is in there out of running off your house into a thing to drink. And you can filter it in there too, okay? Right? And I mean, this is all the stuff that our grandparents and great-grandparents knew from back in the day, and no one knows about it. And again, here's pictures of, in black and white, but of plants to tell you what you're looking for, right? And these are things that you want to keep in a go bag. Look, again, dandelions, you can eat those. It's in this book. So there's books that are out there. There's commercials all over the internet where they have a survival book that they're selling currently that I keep seeing. And I go, well, if I needed one, that would be a good one to have. But every page I'm doing, right, shepherd's purse, and they're telling you what it looks like. Reed grass. They're showing you a picture of it. I'm just flipping pages. Sourdock. Sourdock's really good for you, by the way. And there's a picture of sourdock. So you know what it is that you're looking for when you're looking for these things. And stork bill and what these are. I mean, literally. And then they're teaching you how to make sourdough starter. So literally old school ways of making yeast and making sourdough and making your own bread. Look, here's where they're going to make tamales, it looks like, because they have corn husks that they're playing with right here. So that's tamales are from corn. So you take the husk of the corn when you shuck the corn. You keep that husk and you dry it out. And that's what they put tamales in when they make the paste, and they put the meat, and they take the cornmeal, and they wrap it and roll it in the husk that came from the corn. And then they cook it and they steam it in that husk. And then they open the husk up, and you can keep the husk and pull out the meat, keep the husk and dry it out and reuse it. This is the stuff that people don't know about anymore, right? And they're even showing you how to create a trap and set a trap in the ground, a bear trap and animal traps. How to create one, how to make one, where the jaws are, how to set them. These are books that you should be having if you're going to survive out in the wild. And look, here they're showing you the right place for the job. We laugh about the hobbit holes, but that's actually a door that was cut into the side of a mound where you go in there, and it's actually a storehouse for food, because they didn't have refrigerators. There was no electricity. So they would go either down in the basement of the house, and they would dig underground, and they make a basement. Guess what? When you go down there, the temperature stays at a certain temperature. It doesn't freeze, and it doesn't get to 100 degrees like it is outside. So this is actually a space where they would take all of their food and store it, except for like meats and stuff like that. They would have to pack it. But anything else, when you can things or you put them in jars, mason jars, and then you need a place that you want a cold, dark place, you go and you dig a hole in the ground or in the side of a hill, and then you have either a doorway to get in, or it's below your house so that it's secure and nobody can get in it. And you go down there and you put all of the jars and everything in there. And you literally, this actually says history, the oldest example of a root cellar. That's what it's called, by the way. The oldest example, for those of you in Australia, you'd be happy to know this. The oldest example of a root cellar dates back to 40,000 years ago in Australia. 40,000 years ago in Australia, they had root cellars. Everybody in this country and everybody around the world used to have a root cellar. And then everybody started getting hooked on the idea of refrigeration. And because of that, you just buy what you have. And people only have a little bit of, look, here's inside of a root cellar. And you can see the staircase coming down from up above. And that's under a house. I can see one of the cross beams. And literally, here's people that were storing stuff in a root cellar. And it stays preserved because the temperature in a root cellar is usually between 50 and 38 degrees all year round. Okay, and look, here's your mason jars with food in it that is stored in a root cellar, right? All this stuff is information that you need to know about. And here it actually tells you what, it literally is a page telling you temperatures that you should be keeping stuff at. Apples, temperature between 32 and 40 degrees, humidity of no higher than 90-95%, shelf life is 2 to 7 months. Okay, enzyme production is high. So that means that if you leave apples too long, they'll start to ferment and either turn into alcohol, or they'll turn into I just said it earlier, for yeast, right? So beets, 32 degrees, humidity 98%, 6 to 10 months, enzyme production very low. So it actually tells you where you would keep it, right? Leave root tip, beets leave root tip, 1 inch of greens on top. It tells you all of this information. This is all just in one book, okay? And you could survive in the world just with these two. This one's going to tell you how to do all the things. This one's going to tell you how to find. Literally, I could take this. I could stick it inside here like a bookmarker. I could put that in a satchel, put it in my car, put it in your mobile home, put it in wherever. Carry this around. This is a big book, but this, you could leave this to your kids, and grandkids could survive with no electricity. All they would have to do is have running water and a way of making fire, and then they could create everything they need for a homestead and survive. People would go out there and start doing these homesteads, and they have no idea what they're doing, and they're out there and they're still trying to live like they're in a city. And you're still trying to have the money to go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of groceries, and then you have to figure out how you're going to power your place up to keep everything cool, and you have no idea. Dig up a freaking root cellar and make a root cellar and live that way. And that's why people used to live in caves. Everyone says we were barbarians living in caves. We didn't live in the caves because we were barbarians. When you live in the cave, the temperature inside the cave in the summertime when it's 110 outside is 72. In the wintertime when it's 100 below outside, it's 72. And if it's a little cold, you start a fire in there and you make sure that there's air duct for the smoke to go out and you're nice and toasty warm. That's why people lived in caves, because they were free, or they dug up the earth and created a cave system to live in. Why? Because it was efficient. They've gotten us out of the caves and then these square buildings, and we have to pay them money. So now we have to have a job, and then they won't let us grow any food. Think about all this, guys. They're taking away your knowledge of how to take care of yourself, but it's still there. All you have to do is look it up, and you can actually have all that stuff and create your own. I don't have any gas. I don't have any gas to cook on. You don't need gas to cook on. You can make a Dutch oven. Look that up. I don't know how to make even brick. The Egyptians did it. They used mud and straw. What is straw but dried grass? Okay. When the sun comes out like now, the grass dries. If you let the grass grow and it dries, guess what that is? That's straw when you cut it off. That's hay. Do you know what hay is? Hay is grass that's tall that you let dry and then you harvest. And then you put it into these big bundles and you feed it to your animals. That's grass that is no longer green. Okay. Or you give it to them when it's still green, but it's been cut off. Okay. You can use that to make bricks. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take much. You just have to have the knowledge of how to do it. Okay. And then, just like making gunpowder, you make gunpowder on taking wood and burning it into charcoal, and then taking the charcoal and mashing it up, the literally burnt wood, mashing it up. And I'm not going to tell you the rest, but there's a very slight chemical that you use, glycerin, which glycerin is naturally created by peat moss. Okay. So you take leaves from a tree in the fall and you pile them up. Okay. And then you keep it watering so it doesn't catch fire. So you have to water it down and then turn it. And then what happens is the natural from the water and the compaction creating friction, literally what leaches out is glycerin. Glycerin is from nitroglycerin. Okay. So then you just need to, I'm not going to tell you the rest of it because I don't want people to do this and blow things up, but you take the glycerin and you let it dry in a dry environment. And then you take that glycerin and you mix it with the charcoal, and that is gunpowder. Okay. So it's actually a very simple process. It takes some time to do it. And I know how, because you have to make a crucible and things like that. And so you need to know what you're doing. Then you have to churn it. But it doesn't take long. That's just for gunpowder to create a gun or a cannon, explosives, dynamite. Okay. But the same thing, making brick is straw, mud, clay, if you can find clay. If you're in the United States, there's clay everywhere. You just got to dig down to it and find it. Take the clay, you mix it with the dirt, you mix it with some straw, and then you set it out in a form, which you can create by either putting rocks up or take some wood and make it and set it out and let it bake in the sun. Then you literally dig it up and flip it over with a big wooden spatula so that it dries on both sides. And then if you do the formula right, you have a brick. Okay, you make a bunch of bricks naturally by putting out rows of brick. That's how they used to do it. That's how they still do it. Everything takes time. Nothing happens overnight. But if you start doing it every year, then you have these bricks that work forever. And then when you fire the bricks and it tempers the brick, then the brick becomes fireproof, and it holds its heat. That doesn't take long to temper them either in a fire. Then you take these bricks, or you can get cinder block or brick that's laying around from somewhere, and you can literally make your own Dutch oven. And then put a grate over it from a barbecue. You don't have to have the whole barbecue anymore. You just have to have that grate from your oven, from your stove, or from anyone else's that jumps. You put the grate over it, and you just make sure that there's air that flows through. It's in the book, or I can tell you how to do it. So then you put wood in there, and you burn the wood, and the wood heats up, and you cook your food on top. The best thing to have is cast iron skillet, one with a handle on the top of it, so that you can hang it above a pot with a lid, and then pans. All these other aluminum frying pans, all this shit they sell you in the stores, they're crap. Cast iron. Where do you get them? You get them at all the freaking consignment shops and the places that old people go to, the Goodwill and stuff, because grandma and grandpa are all dying, and people don't have any wanting for these heavy cast iron skillets, and they give them to these people, and they sit there for $1.298. Every time I need one, I go to one of these places, a Goodwill, walk in, there's 10 or 12 of them laying around, and I go and pick them up. As long as they're not rusty, you pick them up. And even if they're rusty, you can still get the rust off of them, and you can temper them. You temper them when you wash them. You never use soap. That ruins it, because it leaches all the oil out of it. You wash it with hot water, and you scrub it with a steel wool. You get all the freaking food off of it. You don't use soap because I have to sterilize it. No, because you're going to cook it. Cooking kills all germs. That's why we started cooking things, so that if there was any weird germs, it would cook the germs and kill them. I guess I'm doing a whole show today on, instead of the law of one, we're going to be talking about survival. Then you take some oil, some cooking oil, and you put it in the pan, and you heat it up, and you let the oil not start bubbling and start popping and blowing things up, but you heat it up to where if you take some water on your fingers and you throw it in there and it crackles and starts exploding, it's hot enough. Turn it off, leave the oil in there, let it cool down to room temperature. Make sure then you rub the oil around the entire inside of that cast iron skillet and leave it like that. Pull the excess oil off or not. Leave it like that and put it away. You want it to be oiled. And then the oil gets into the pores, and it makes a non-stick out of the cast iron. Okay. And then when you go to cook, that's bacon grease. You save the grease, you pour it in. You take a beer can. If you drink beer, you pour the bacon grease, cut the lid off the top of it, or use, something else, whatever you can use. Pour the grease in. Keep that grease. That keeps for a very long time. It solidifies. It gets hard. You use that to cook with. People go, oh my God, that's nasty. No, it's been cooked. It's not nasty. It's not poisonous. As long as you put a lid on it, you don't have bugs climbing in it. You put a lid on it. Every one of my family, I don't have one over here right now because I got rid of it, but every single one of my family's got a grease cup or a beer can or a coffee can sitting on their stove where we pour everything into that and we reuse that stuff to cook with. So that way you don't have to buy so much oil. You use the grease, the fat from animals, bacon grease and shit like that. You guys just need to, right? Denise is going, exactly. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? Anna's just showing up. What the hell is Leo talking about? Anna pops in, right? She didn't say that, but today, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm talking about survival. So instead of the law of one. So you guys need to know how to survive, because if the world gets crappy, you have to be able to take care of yourself. Learn it now. If you don't know, find someone who does. And if you don't know anyone who does, get a hold of me and I'll explain it to you. It's not difficult. It just has a learning curve until you get used to it. You can go on to YouTube. I did this to find out because my buddy told me. I was like, I've never slaughtered a pig. I wonder how that. He's like, everything is the same. It's just the hardest animal on the face of the earth to slaughter and clean is a pig. So you should learn how to do that. I went online and I spent like 2 or 3 months. Every day I looked up, how do you clean chickens? How do you skin a chicken? And I learned every technique that everybody had. And there was a guy that was talking and he skinned a chicken in less than 35 seconds. There was another guy that over here in the United States, because we'll eat them, squirrels. And as he was talking, ex-military, these guys were all survivalists. And he was an old guy. And this was about 10 years ago. And he was probably in his 70s. He literally shot a squirrel and gutted it and cleaned it while he was talking on camera and was like, here you go. And there's people that do that with every animal. They show you step by step, filming it, and you can learn how to gut and prepare every animal to eat that is out there. Every kind of bird, everything. And I looked that up to see how accurate it was. And I was like, wow, I learned techniques on how to do that. The old Irish, Peters, if he's still here, the old Irish technique of coursing rabbits and skinning a rabbit is the greatest technique I have ever seen in my entire life and the fastest and the most efficient way of skinning a rabbit, or at least gutting a rabbit, that I've ever seen in my life. And it's because when you have a rabbit, if you're going to kill 3 or 4 or 5 of them, you have to carry them. Same thing. I have a vest in the other room right here that I put on, and it has places for shotgun shells all lined up on the chest, and in the back is pockets that zip down, and it's made for duck hunting and pheasant hunting and bird hunting, or any kind of hunting of small game. And you take the dead animal and you shove it in the pack and zip it up, and you keep going, right? And literally, this guy was over in Ireland, and he grabbed a rabbit that he had just shot, and he said, the guts of a rabbit weigh, right? It's weighing, and it starts to go bad as the rabbit is if you don't clean it right away. So literally, what he did was he grabbed the rabbit around the neck. He grabbed the chest of the rabbit, and he squeezed the chest and broke the chest cavity. And then he literally grabbed it, and he slid his hand down the rabbit like this, and all the guts came right out the pooper. Everything just came right out the pooper, and he literally just grabbed a hold of the guts and ripped it right off and threw it on the ground. And then he took that and stuck it in his pack. By doing that, he preserved how long that it would take. You don't have to worry about rigor mortis and all this other stuff with the rabbit so much. But you just lost like 2 pounds or 3 pounds off of a rabbit, and you can continue to get 4 or 5 more rabbits, and literally just crush the lungs and rip it out. Now, you have to go in and clean everything out because some of it may not come out, but most of the guts come out. You don't have to worry about it, right? Because you have to learn how to skin things, because if you screw up and hit the kidneys and the urine gets in, it taints the meat, and you no longer can eat it. It's nasty. It's got high in ammonia and salt, and the meat's no good. So you have to learn how to do these things, but it's not that difficult. And if you don't want to do that, and you just want to get into vegetables, the same thing is there. Literally growing, you just have to learn when to plant crops wherever it is that you live, what grows there in that area, when do you plant those, when do you harvest those. You learn these things from things like these 2 books that I just showed you. Right? This little guy right here tells you how to forage and find them. This big guy here tells you how to do everything else. All the things that I learned as I was a kid, learning from all of my family and friends, my dad's friends, and all of these survivalists on how to do this stuff while I was growing up. I thought everybody knew how to do this until I realized that it's only 2 or 3% of the population today still knows how to do these things. If the world got crappy right now, people, even at my age, I'm 56. I'm going to be 57. People will be like, what are you going to do? I live between 2 rivers. I live between 2 natural water sources that flow out into the ocean. So I can fish, I can get water, clean water. And then there's plenty of food. Plenty of food. Most of when you're in a city, most of the food is poisonous because they don't plant food that you can eat. They only plant poisonous foods and plants that you can't eat. So you have to really be careful if you live in a modern city, because if the world gets shitty, you want to get out of that city, because everybody's going to rape and pillage and kill each other over food, and then they're going to start cooking and eating each other. So if you're in a modern city and the world does get crappy, you need to get out of town as soon as possible. But if you get in a car and think you're going to get in a vehicle and drive out of town on the streets, not going to happen. They're going to be clogged up with everybody else who has no idea what they're doing and where they're going. So if you literally have to set a plan. This is all in my book, How to Get Out of Debt, or not How to Get Out of Debt, but survival, prepping / survival for beginners. You literally have to have a plan. I have go packs in my bedroom. I have go packs in my car. I can literally right now, and my sister was like, what is this on the floor over here by your bed? I'm like, that is a first aid kit. All I have to do is pick it up and walk out the door with it. And she's like, wow, you really are. I'm like, I have stuff everywhere. All I got to do is grab it. Ready to go. Ammunition, weapons, firearms, lighters, multiple ways. All of this stuff you don't think about until you need it, but then it's too late. And people go, oh, you could have all that stuff and you may never, ever use it. I'd rather have it and never need it than to need it and never have it. Tell you right now. Those are words that came out of my father's mouth when I was a boy, and I thought he was crazy because he had stuff that I don't think we ever used. And now I see and understand what exactly that means. If the world goes crazy, you only got what you got. I said that to my buddy because we were sitting. I'm wearing shorts right now. but I could grab clothes. We were sitting in kilts one day. We just got back from the Scottish Games, and we were both survivalists. And I looked at him and I said, "You realize if the world gets shitty, you got what you're wearing." He was like, "I know, right?" And I'm like, "It's a good thing we're armed because we're wearing kilts, bro." And he was like, "People survived on this planet and wearing kilts for thousands of years before trousers." I said, "Yeah, you're right there." Right? I said, "What happens in the wintertime?" He says, "We kill ourselves some bears and make some coats and some pants." I said, "Yeah, I guess you're right there." And we have food, right? So if you don't have a plan, then you don't have any idea of what's going on. People go, "Oh my God, I'm living in the middle of the desert. I'm going to die." You have a better chance of surviving there. You just have to adjust for the heat in that desert. If you look around and you learn and get the books and or ask, people, natives, aborigines, they'll tell you that they've survived out there. Even Africans, when they're like, "Oh, there's no food and these people are starving to death." They're only starving to death because they're not teaching their children how to survive in that desert anymore. People used to live in that desert of Africa for 1,000 generations and they were doing just fine. And now all of a sudden people don't have any food. Why? Because they're not being taught how to cultivate the food anymore. And they're reliant on people bringing them food now, or reliant on having cash to go to a store. That's all that is. That's what's happening worldwide. So you guys need to look into that and know what's going on. Right? Yeah, and I said, I'm so glad I'm not the only one planned, packed, and ready. Some of us just are, right, Anna? I'm sure, right? Some of us just are because we've grew up that way, or we had family members, or it's in our DNA to not trust in society. But not everybody's that way. Probably 95% of the population of the world right now has no idea. In the countries where they're poorer, in what the so-called third world countries, those people are still living by planting food and crops and keeping chickens and pigs and cattle for food because they've had to. And so they still learn that. When you move away from that stuff and you move to the modern societies, the modern world, they literally want you in apartments, so you have nothing. And then they tell you can't have plants and you can't grow food out there in the common areas. But some places around the United States are starting to have common areas where people are planting crops to eat. But it's still not enough, really, to feed everybody because there's no real security. It's kind of cool if the world is fine and it's not shitty to have that. You can just go out and you can do that. But if it's not, you can still grow stuff in your house. I just haven't started doing it, but you can grow stuff in your house by planters. And plant crops in your house and have them near windows or put on a light and, get black light. But you get too much of that, they assume you're growing pot. And then, if it's illegal where you're at, then you'll have people raiding you. And then they'll start telling you can't grow corn in your house. Why not? Right? They'll have to make a law to stop you. In this country, because people were starting to do that, they were making laws that won't allow you to grow a certain amount of crops in this country because they don't want you growing too much food. Because if you do, you'll start giving it to your family members or trading it, and they can't have that because they're not making money off of it. So they're trying to make it every year or every few years, they're lowering the amount that you can grow on your own because eventually they're just going to take it away. And they do it so slow that they go from, well, you can only grow 2 bushels of corn. Then 5 years later, 1 bushel of corn. Then 3 years later, half a bushel of corn. And if you don't know what a bushel is, it's because they've already taken that knowledge from you. Okay, so that's what they're doing, and they're lowering the amount. You can only keep these amount of chickens. You can't have a cow. You can't have a rooster because it's an annoyance to people. They hear it crowing in the morning. So therefore, you can't get extra chickens because if you don't have a rooster, then they don't impregnate or they don't spermicide the eggs, and so the eggs are no good. They're only good for eating. So you're not going to have extra chickens being born. You need a rooster so that he goes over and fertilizes the eggs, and the eggs will turn into other chickens. They're telling you can't have roosters because they don't want, you can have all the chickens you want, but they're only good for laying eggs to eat. And then when those chickens die, you got to buy chickens from somebody who can grow them, someone who lives in an area where they can have a rooster. And eventually they're going to try and do away with that. So the only people who are having chickens are the ones that they want, that are selling the eggs to you in the large companies and selling chickens at the stores. Okay, same thing with cattle. We're trying to do away with cattle because if you have cattle, you have milk. And if you have milk, you can create anything that is a milk byproduct, including butter and cheese and everything that goes with it, whipped cream, all of that. And then if you have cattle, you also have beef. So they want to get rid of that animal altogether and tell you that the farts from that animal are destroying the atmosphere. Oh, and the beef that you eat will give you a heart attack and cancer and you'll fucking die. Right? There was a video, I don't know if I was watching it last night. I think I forwarded it to a couple of you, where this guy, there was some people that were animal activists and they were protesting, and he came up with a shish kebab with, I don't know what was on it, chicken or beef. And he was sitting there and he was licking it and he was eating it in front of this girl. And she was yelling at him at the top of her lungs. And she had to say over and over, "With your little dick." She must have said that 3 times while she was yelling. So literally she was trying to go after his manhood because he didn't care when she was like, "You're going to die from eating that, and you're a horrible person, and you're brutalizing animals." And he just didn't care, and he was eating it, and he was ignoring her and smiling and licking it. And then she had to go and say that he had a little penis over and over, because she was trying to get him and to just be mean as she could to him. And so she had to go and say, "With your little dick." Like, and I was like, well, then I started wondering, I wonder if they were boyfriend and girlfriend and they broke up or something, because why would some random woman trying to be telling some guy who she's offended by because he's eating meat, why would she then come across and say, "You have a small penis, you have a little dick"? Unless she was a angry ex. And if not, then that just tells you the mindset of that person, that she literally, because she hated him so much because he's eating meat, that she has to go after his sexuality because nothing else was working. And nothing ended up working. He just kept eating it in front of her with a smile on his face and waving it in front of her face. Then somebody grabbed her and pulled her away because she kept getting more violent, and she probably went after him. But then this other woman was there, and she started yelling at him, and he was doing the same thing. And she's like, "You know what? I don't even care. I'm not going to tell you anything because you're going to die anyways." And that was when they finally ended it. So that was an adult woman who was probably in her 30s, and the other girl was in her 20s. So the one who was in her 30s, because he was like, I really don't care about you, but I'm not going to just like kowtow and run away. So I'm going to go and get a shish kebab with some chicken on it and eat it right in front of you, and not care, right? Because I can. So he was antagonizing them, and they were antagonizing him. But the whole purpose of that was, these people who were protesting things feel that they know better than you or anyone else what's good for you. Same thing with the atmosphere in the world, right? 1970, before I was born all the way up to 1975 in this country, all they kept telling us was the world is cooling and we're going into an ice age. It's imminent. By the year 1985, we're going to be in an ice age that's going to last for 10,000 years. And that scientists have been saying for decades that the world is winding down and getting colder, and we're all going to die. And then in 1975, on one day, it went from, we have global cooling and we're going to go into an ice age, and the next day they went global warming and the sea is going to rise and we're going to melt everything and the ice caps are going to melt and the water is going to boil and the earth's going to die. And since then, in 1975, from that point to this, they predicted that we were going to be dead in less than 5 years from 1975. And then 5 years later, another 5 years. 5 years later, another 5 years. 5 years later, another 5 years. Okay. And the global temperature since 1975 has gone up 0.3% in 50 years. That's it. Okay. And literally the sea is going to rise in the next 400 years by 8 inches. That's it. That's what scientists are predicting. 400 years, 0.8 of an inch, or let's just say it's 8 inches. 8 inches. This isn't the flood where the sea rose like 500 feet in 50 days. Okay. So literally, it's bullshit. You can look into that. But it depends on where you look. And then when you look at things, just like fact checkers, when you look at a scientist, you have to look at who paid that person to do that and what the agenda is. Because these days, it's mostly a lie on all sides. But nothing has changed. That's why there was a guy that was a comedian, and he's this old man. He must have been in his 80s. And he was talking about, he says, for all of you young people that are worried about the climate, He says, just so you guys know that every single year, it's hot in the summertime. And some years are hotter than others. My entire life, they've been bitching about that because for 50 years they have. And nothing has changed, just the hottest on record. This today was the hottest day in the history of the planet. Yeah, and 2 months ago, it was the coldest day in the history of the planet on that same time period. That happened here in the United States. Here in the United States, 2 months ago, was the coldest month that we had on record and possibly in the last 10,000 years since Ice Age in the United States, North American continent. Because of this Arctic blast that happened, and all of this cold air came down from the north and swept across the entire continent of the North American continent. In fact, it went around the entire northern hemisphere of the planet. Coldest on record for 1,000 years for that time period. But yet we're concerned because the planet is heating up. We're all going to die. It's just not going to happen. It's just they're making money. Same thing with everything else that they freak out about. But things could happen. You could have something like Katrina happening that happened in like over in Louisiana. Things could happen. And if you're not prepared and something happens, I've been talking my entire life that California is going to break off from the continent and fall into the ocean. Could happen any moment. I know people that are paranoid, scared to death that there's going to be a giant earthquake and the whole, most of California is just going to fall off into the ocean. We're all going to die. And they moved out of the state. Same thing with the super volcano in Yellowstone National Forest, Yellowstone National Park. It's a super volcano and it's overdue. It always blows off and kills off 3/4 of the population, and it's overdue by 300 years. It can happen any moment. It's going to happen. Krakatoa will be pale in comparison. They've been saying that since I can remember, since I was a little boy. Still hasn't happened. Well, it could. Yeah, you're right. Just like Nostradamus could be right once. Okay, it could happen. And if it does, it's not going to matter where you are. If that super volcano erupts in the United States, that's a global killer. If that erupts, everyone on the planet, probably 3/4 of the population of this earth, will be dead. So it doesn't matter where you run and I'm going to move to South America. It's going to get you there too. Okay? So if it happens, you're all going to die. We're all going to die. It's just a matter of how soon, whether you die right in the blast, you die in a week, a month, a year, 5 years. Same thing when they talk about nuclear winter. I'm gonna buy a shelter. I'm gonna dig a shelter, and if there's a nuclear explosion, I'm gonna go live under my shelter. You better hope that you can live there for 50 generations, because otherwise, if you don't have that much food, you're gonna die as soon as you come up topside. Okay. So the same thing. If there's a nuclear war and it gets big enough, the amount of radiation is going to kill everybody on the planet eventually. So if you worry about that stuff, you're going to end up on the floor laying down, sucking on a Cheerio with a blanket over your head. However, smaller events can happen that can wreak havoc, and you could be without power, water. You could be in a demilitarized zone where people are killing each other. That can go on for a month, 3, 4, 5 days, a month, a week, a year. That can go on for a long time. If those things happen and you don't have the wherewithal to take care of yourself, you're going to be one of the dead. Same thing with how bad things are getting in these societies where people are starting to have to now move and live out on the plains the way people used to live in this country all the way up until the 1940s. And then things changed. And if you're part of our generation, or even one of the generations that's around that's 100 years old, you never had to worry about those things. Unless you are 100 years old, then you might have grown up during the problems that we had in the United States in the 1920s and 30s. Okay. Otherwise, you don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like because I've never actually went through that, but I can imagine because I've heard stories and from survivalists of what could happen. So if something like that does happen, or you don't have enough money with the way things are going in the world today, you have to augment the amount of money that you have because you don't have money and things are getting very expensive. How do you change that? You have to start becoming self-sufficient and being able to grow your own crops for food. And so people are going to start moving out into the rural areas and living on plantations. You're seeing it happen. I know personally, in fact, right, literally On here, you have Cody, who's starting to do that. Aaron, if he was here, is starting to do that. People are starting to do that out of necessity, and they're having to learn that learning curve of how to survive now out on the plains, because no one is alive in their family to teach them. And so my point is, start learning it in case you need it. If you don't know it, you can't easily make that transition. It's hard work. I would have a hard time because I'm not in shape. I would have a hard time right now doing that if I had to, but I could survive because I have the knowledge to make my life easier, and I wouldn't be living in fear with not knowing how I'm going to survive. Right? You have to learn that you can't rely on society the way you know it. You have to figure out ways, like Aaron's doing that now, where he's realizing, I need more power to run everything because everything is electric. So I have to have more solar panels. And I was like, what about wind? They have these little wind turbines now. I've seen them down the street here. This guy has them on his building to where they're only about, a couple feet tall, and they spin in the wind, and that generates power. Okay. And I see that when they have them on boats, to where as they're sailing, they have them up there and they're just turning from the motion or the wind, and they're generating power. It's not going to generate all the power you need, but if you have solar panels and wind, and then if you have a running water, you can then hook up what they used to do in the old days, where you literally have sitting in the water a little turbine that's turned by the water as it runs by, and that generates more electricity. Then you just have to have batteries to put that to put that electricity into, so that you can use that stuff. So you have to think of this stuff beforehand and figure out, is there running water? And if not, I need to figure out water. Do I need to start digging for a well? Find out if there's a water table, how deep is the water, and start doing these things old school ways. Otherwise, you're still relying on money to survive. So you have to figure out septic tanks. You have to figure out all this stuff, because otherwise you still have to go back into town to drain your septic tank out of whatever trailer that you use and that you're pooping and peeing in. Do you see? Or you dig an outhouse, or you dig a septic tank and have chemicals and fix all that stuff. If you don't know how to do all of that, you got to figure out what you're going to do to pump that shit out. That means you need to generate cash, because you're going to need that to do that. Unless you have plumbing on the property that you move into. And then you're still paying somebody else for that. So you can get kind of off the grid, but you have to realize that there's still things that you have to learn. Learn the things ahead of time, and that way you don't have to worry so much when you're trying to figure it out on the fly. But if you're out there and you're having to figure it out on the fly, my point here is there's resources for you, right? I was watching a TV show. It drove me crazy. My mom loved it, and it was Homestead Rescue. And I was like, these people are morons. Why are they out there on a homestead and they didn't research any of this, and they have no idea what they're doing? Why did they do that? Right? These people, it wasn't like they had no choice. If you have no choice, then I can see that. You're like, I was screwed and I'm out here now. All right, figure it out. I'm not going to yell at you and go, why did you get yourself out there and not learn this? Whatever happened, and you're out there. Okay, figure it out. But these people were choosing to be off the grid. I'm going to go and live off the grid, and I'm going to create a homestead. Okay, then why didn't you research what you needed to research to figure it out, so you hit the ground running? You're out there trying to figure it out, and you couldn't, and you called in a specialist, and he had to come and save your homestead and film it and make you look stupid on national television, worldwide television, that you didn't know what you were doing, and these people had to come in and fix your homestead for you so that you could survive out in the wild. Why didn't you use your cell phone that you already had to have all of these resources ahead of time to figure out what I'm going to need to do when I'm out there? Plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't have a life. If you can't plan now, what makes you think you're going to be able to figure that shit out when you're out there? Some people have to do it out of necessity. The necessity is the mother of invention. I get that, and I'm okay with that. If you're strong enough, you're going to survive. But my point is, if you don't have the knowledge to begin with, you're behind the 8 ball to start. And that's scary. It's scary enough even when you're not behind the 8 ball, right? Learn what the word pemmican means. It's not just a beef jerky company. Pemmican is what the natives used to make that they could eat off of. And that was taking animal fat and taking innards and everything, their version of haggis, and making this meat and barley and mixing it with animal fat, grease, so that it could be hardened, and then they would wrap it in cloth, and they could have it in their pocket so that they had survival food when they would go and do things. If they didn't catch fish, or they couldn't shoot a deer or a pig or a rabbit or something, they could pull out that pemmican and live off of it until they could get things to make food or forage. And it was called pemmican here in the United States. And a company made beef jerky out of that. It was where beef jerky came from, or where jerky came from, was from pemmican, but it wasn't done with, but they still did that as well. Learn how to dry naturally meats to make jerky without electricity. Learn these things. You can do it with fish. You can do it with everything. And it preserves it for a long time. Root cellars. All of that are in these books. Right? Like I said, I'm not getting paid for this. This isn't a commercial for this, whoever wrote this. There's other ones that are out there. This just happens to be the one that I have on hand, right? The Lost Ways. This one's a good one because it tells you all the things that I talked about in my book when I put that out. Mine was a lot smaller than this and a lot more to the point, but this one has pictures and everything in it. And then, foraging for edible foods. This little thing is a lifesaver, and it's laminated, so it's waterproof. Right? You can carry this in a purse, a satchel, in your back pocket if you have to. Very lightweight. The other book's a little heavier. You can find these things out there and have them on hand in case the world gets shitty. And if the world never gets shitty and you never have to use these items in your entire life, then you can rest your head at night when you go to bed or when you're dying on your deathbed. I was spared from having to rough it the way people lived on this planet for thousands of years. Thank God for that. But my kids learned and my grandkids learned because just in case. Most people don't want to have any part of it. They don't care because they think this is going to be around forever. What if it's not? Can't guarantee anything. Can't guarantee how long you're going to live. Can't guarantee whether you're going to get your arm chopped off or shot or raped or pillaged. So why assume there's always going to be a tomorrow and that I'm always going to have money and there's always going to be food at the store? There's always going to be law and order. Because if you're living anywhere in the developed world today and you remember 5 years ago, you should know how bad things have gotten with crime and everything else in whatever country you live in right now. COVID was the beginning of it, and things have degraded with this whole defund the police crap that they have going on. So, and then think about if you're a farmer in most of the European countries, you know what I'm talking about. You guys had to fight because they were trying to outlaw you guys from being able to farm food. They're still trying to do it. Why? Why? Because they want to control all the food and the only controllers of the food. Okay? That's why in my new book that's coming out, yes, I'm going to do a commercial. Then I'm going to get off here because it's almost 5 o'clock and I haven't done any of the Law of One. We'll pick that up from the beginning next week. That's why in my book that's coming up, I call them the controllers because that's what they do. I'm not naming names, so I'm not going to have any Bilderbergers and Illuminati or Anunnaki trying to murder me. I'm generically calling them out, but I pretty much tell you who I'm talking about without saying names. So the reality about reality, returning to the old ways, is not about survival in the physical, but it is about survival in the spiritual, in the same way that prepping or being a survivalist in the physical is about surviving off of the grid away from their control. And that is where everyone is going to have to start doing unless we gain control of and wrench control away from these people who are controlling everything currently. Because they're taking more of it, and they tried to lock down the world through COVID and it didn't work. But they're fighting really hard to let go of the control they did get. And they keep trying to tell us every other day there's a new COVID strain that's popping up that's combining with 47,000 other COVID strains, and it's 800 million times more lethal than the other one that came out yesterday. And that if you don't get the shot, you're all going to fucking die. And guess what? Nothing changes. Not everybody dies. Pandemic has been over for 2.5 years. Never really began. Most of it was a lie. We know that now. And things are still the same, except for when they tell you it's not, and they're lying to you, and they're taking more and more of your control. Okay. Things are starting to go back to normal because why? We're hurting them in their hot pocketbooks. And this is why I brought this up today, and this is why I went down this road. If you guys all start growing your own food and start buying stuff less in the store, you're going to see an apple go from $2 for one apple to 50 cents an apple because they're going to get desperate that they're not making money and they're going to lower the prices. Okay. When people stopped buying everything when the housing market crashed in the United States, they were selling $500 leather jackets for $50 because they needed to make money to stay alive. The prices of food are starting to come down, even in the state of California, because they've raised the minimum wage and no one's going to the restaurants. Large corporations are closing their restaurants and leaving the state because they're not making any money because no one's buying it from them. Because they can't lower their prices because they have to pay to keep the doors open because this state is forcing them to pay their employees $20 an hour in a place where the minimum wage in this country is like $12.50. I hope every company leaves the state of California and there is no food and there is no gas stations and there is nothing here because the people will then start leaving and then they'll start selling houses with backyards and I'll move into one of those and grow my own food, or I'll move out of the state. That's how things become affordable is we take back what is ours. We don't have to overthrow anybody. If you guys are afraid to vote them out, all you have to do is start fending for yourself. Make your own bread. That's actually pretty easy. You can still get 5 pounds of flour in any store for less than $2. It used to be like $1 or 50 cents, but COVID drove the price up. Okay. You can still get flour and salt and everything that you need. I have stuff here that I bought during COVID that I haven't used. I'm running low on flour because I used it to make gravy. I got to get some more flour. I have enough yeast to last me a year sitting in that cupboard right there to make bread for over a year and never run out of yeast because I stocked up on it. I have 5 pounds of salt, sea salt from the San Francisco Salt Company in that cupboard over there. I have 10 pounds of baking soda over there, and I used to have 20 pounds of flour. I bought all that during COVID. And rice, I have 20 pounds of rice and pasta in that pantry over there. And I don't eat any of it. It's all dry goods, and it can sit for 4 or 5 years before it goes bad. Why? Because if things get crappy, I have pasta, I have rice, I have flour, I can make my own food. Most people have 3 to 5 days of worth of food in their house. And some people who have a pantry have maybe 30 days worth of food if they're lucky. That's it. I keep enough to where I could literally feed my mother and I without even MREs. I could feed my mother and I, and the only thing I would need is water. And if the electricity goes out and we don't have any water, I can go down to the river and bring back water. Okay, that river's not going to stop. There's 2 of them that come off these mountains that go out to the ocean. I can go down there and scoop it out and boil it. Okay, I have survival gear. I have stoves. I have gas. And I had to, right out here, I'll make a Dutch oven. Anybody that's going to try and stop me with a law, the police are going to show up and when the world's shitty, they're not coming here. They're going to be standing in front of the Walmart and a Target and all the big chain companies trying to keep all the looters out. I'm going to be worried about some guy making a Dutch oven in the front lawn of his apartment complex. Right? They're not going to be worried that I'm going to chop down a tree or go into somebody's house who's dead and bring their furniture out and start cooking using it. Right? My buddy used that term when there was a true story, a movie that Mel Gibson made called We Were Young Once and Soldiers, written from a book, from a true story of I think they were in Korea. I don't remember if it was Korea or Vietnam. It was one of those two. It might have been Vietnam. It was Vietnam. First Air Cavalry in Vietnam. And they went, when the French pulled out of Vietnam, the Americans went in, and the First Air Cav went in, and they got surrounded and attacked, and they had to fight for their lives and hold out against this onslaught of the Vietnamese army that came in. And eventually they ended up having to pull out because they were about to get all killed. They got overrun. And they wrote a book about it. The guy that survived it wrote a book about it, and Mel Gibson made a movie out of it. And in the beginning, they had been in Korea, him and his first sergeant. He was a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. And they were getting geared up, knowing that they were going to go into Vietnam and go in the middle of a demilitarized zone and behind enemy lines and be in war. and they were loading up with weapons. And he looked at, I can't remember his name now. He was born out here in Sacramento, where I live. Famous cowboy actor. I can't think of his name right now. Was in Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. Has that deep, gravelly voice. Always has a mustache. He was born here, and he doesn't sound like it but his father always called him a prune picker because they came from Texas. So he has the accent, but he was born in Sacramento. And he talks about, I can't think of his name right now. He's married to Mary Steenburgen. Anyway, he was in it, and he's grabbing a M16, and he says, "Do you want one of these?" And he says that, Mel Gibson's character says that to him, and he says, "No, when we're in the middle of it and I need one, there'll be plenty of them laying around on the ground." Because he knew that most of these kids were going to die. And those old war dogs, he would be able to just pick up a gun from the wounded or the dead. So when I said the same thing about prepping to my buddy Paul, he had read that book and then we saw the movie. When I said, "Aren't you worried about having weapons and food in case the world gets shitty?" And he says, "No, if the world gets shitty, there'll be plenty of that shit laying around. Because people are all going to die and they're going to be starving and they're going to kill each other." And so he's like, "There'll be plenty of weapons. There'll be plenty of food. There'll be plenty of stuff that I just take from everybody else because they're going to be, herded, and most of them are going to run away and leave half their shit in their house." He's right, but you can't count on the world getting shitty and then being able to go in and get stuff because people are going to be having the same idea, right? But he said that, and I thought it was funny that his mentality was, "I don't have to worry. I have guns and I have a small amount of food and stuff like that. I can survive for about a month. I'll forage for the rest." And since then, I've learned more about foraging and realized, okay, he was kind of right in some sense, but you still do have to have a certain amount of food on supply. I take care of my mother right now, so I do need to have some. If it was just me, I'd be a little bit more inclined to be that way because I could take care of Sam Elliott. Thank you, Cassie. Oh, and Peter said it too. Thank you, Peter. Sam Elliott. Yeah, I love Sam Elliott. I didn't know. I always assumed he was from Texas with that accent. And one day I was watching an interview with him, and he said, no, he was born in Sacramento. His family came from Texas and migrated out here, and he was born out here. And his father reminded him that if you're a native Californian, that's the derogatory term. You're a prune picker. That's what we call all of us that are native to California. And I'm Native American. I'm 2%, 5% Native American. From Baja, California. It's a little further south, about 800 miles from here. But I'm also second generation Californian. So I'm a prune picker because that was what everybody was. The biggest crop out here for a long time were prunes. And so if you were living in the California, you were a prune picker. To this day, it's still a derogatory term, which we take very serious. And so you're a prune picker. Damn straight I am. So if you're a native Californian, you're a prune picker. So his father always called him a prune picker. And he took that and he smiles when he says it now with that little smile, and that smile he gets with his big mustache. And yeah, I'm a prune picker. My father never let me live that down. So his character was the guy who said that. So you have to have in your head, it's a military term in the United States Army. My father used to say it. It's a military term in the Army specifically, was said it more than anybody else in the United States. Be prepared for the worst, but hope for the best. And that's a term that is synonymous with America because of that. It was something that was invented here in the Americas, but in the military from hundreds of years ago, way back. And I don't know if it came over from Europe, but it was, be prepared for the worst, but hope for the best. My father drummed that into all of us as a survivalist. He said, always assume the worst can happen and be prepared for that. And if it doesn't, and if the worst possible scenario doesn't happen, then everything in your life is golden. And know that. So if you're not prepared and that worst case scenario happens, you're done. So I used to have, MREs. Literally, I left 1,000 of them on my yacht when I moved in here to take care of my mom. I haven't bought any since because they charge you so much these days. They oh my God, if I wanted to make money at survival, all you got to do is start a company that sells rations of food, because people are paying $750 for like 3 days worth of food. That is insane. So instead of doing that, I go back to the survivalist in me from my father teaching us kids, our whole family, to be survivalists. Don't rely on dry goods like that when you can buy beans. I got beans too. I got 20 pounds of beans in there, maybe 30. Beans, pasta, flour, sugar, salt, and you don't even have to have sugar. Salt, definitely, you got to have salt. You can get these things. They're heavy. It's hard to transport, but if you're going to shelter in place, you can have those things and you could go out and forage. In the old days, if you look back in the survivalists, and people who lived on farms, they'd go into town and buy flour, and they'd buy sugar, and they would buy like beans. Everything else they got on their own ranch. So they limited the amount of money they needed from town, the amount of things they needed from town. They needed sugar. Unless they didn't have sugar, then they had honey. You keep bees, you get honey. You go find bees, you get honey. So you don't always have to have sweets, right? That's a luxury. But flour, maybe some bacon if you don't want to kill your own pigs, and beans, pasta, dry goods, and that's all you would have to spend money at in the store. Water you would get and boil out boil out of a river or a stream, a lake. You can boil that stuff and sterilize it and drink it. Use it for your crops, whatever. But there are some things that you do need, right? But you don't have to have everything. You don't have to buy all your fruits and vegetables only from the store, right? You can grow them. You have to be proactive and look into books online. What grows when in my area? What can I forage? Even in the cities. But most of the stuff in the cities are non-edible unless you have housing tracts where people grow stuff in their backyards. Then you have lemons and apples and cherries and avocados and things like that people are growing, right? Those are older people usually, and grandmas are always famous for that. But you should learn to start doing that now. If you live in a house, grow a garden. Learn the ins and outs of keeping pests from eating your food, birds and other animals from eating crops that you grow. Learn that now when you don't need it. Learn how to keep the ants out. Learn how to keep the squirrels from eating all of your apples or your carrots. Learn how to do that stuff now when you don't need it. But then you're going to find that you can grow your own spices too. All of the spices, garlic, chives, all of the spices that you use, dill, all those you can grow in a little cubby that's in front of a window. You can grow in a little teeny planter that's like 2 feet by a foot by 6 inches deep. You can grow all the spices you cook with. Okay? You can literally do that. So you need to look into these things and start doing them you'll find that your bill at the grocery store is going to be less because you won't need to buy all of that stuff. If you get yourself kind of in the mindset of what do I need to do so that I don't, and you'll find that it's really cheap and it's self-sustaining. Okay. Right. Some of the stuff you can immediately, but if you're going to grow fruits and vegetables, or especially like apples and oranges, you got to plant a tree and that has to take 3 to 5 years before it starts bearing fruit. So that takes a little bit more time. So you may have to start, bananas and things like that. But everything else, you go get 1 bag of potatoes, you can feed yourself for the rest of your life off of those potatoes that you get from the store by growing your own potatoes from those potatoes. And then every potato that you pick, you plant 1 back. Okay. So you pull up the potatoes and you take all the potatoes off of there and you take 1 potato and put it back in the ground. Learn when you're supposed to plant those. Okay. Learn how to preserve these things, right? How to pressure cook and how to conserve, and then figure the stuff out. If you got an area, well, that takes a lot of power to have a freezer, and not if you go and grow your own root cellar, right? You go down and dig a hole and have it below your house so that you go downstairs in your basement and open up a door and go downstairs into the root cellar. Okay. And if not, and you have property, you can go, if you have a hill, you can dig into the hill, learn what you need to do so it doesn't cave in on you. Learn all of these things. Look that up. Figure that stuff out and spend the time. You're going to find that it's worth it because you're going to be able to take care of yourself. It takes a little bit of work, and yes, it's hard work. It's hard work to manage a garden. But as you start augmenting the amount of money you need from the store, you're going to find that you don't need to work as much because you don't need as much cash because you're more self-sufficient. And then you're going to find that most of the stuff that you grow is self-sustaining. You get one apple from the store, and each one of those seeds can grow an apple tree. Do you understand that? You get one cucumber, and every single seed inside the middle of that cucumber grows a whole plant and grows 2 or 3 or 5 cucumbers. So you take one cucumber and take all the seeds out of that and plant them in a row. You have cucumbers to feed yourself and your whole family for the rest of your life now from one cucumber you bought at the store. Do you understand that? You need to learn how to dry the seeds and then cultivate them and put them in the ground and when to get them. But before that, you got to learn to forage for yourself so you don't have, because it takes a while to do that. And the seasons, once you get the seasons down of when to grow things, and then you have the gourds that growed all the way into October, you use them to carve pumpkins and have all these pretty looking gourds you put out everywhere. That's food. And each one of those has seeds in it to grow for the next year. You dry those seeds out. Instead of eating all of the seeds, you dry them out and you store them for the next year and you plant them yourselves. There's crops that you plant as soon as the winter starts to thaw. There's crops that you plant that go all the way up to, and if you're canning everything and mason jarring everything and storing it in a root cellar, you have food to feed yourself throughout the entire winter. And then you just have to go to the store for the small things you don't already have. But you have to start learning to live with the land, not against it. Plant stuff at what time? Like here in the United States, you plant marijuana in May, first week of May, and you pick it in the second week of October, and you have enough pot to smoke until next May when you plant a new crop. I know that. Okay? I know that. Right? So if you're in the United States, May, October is when you harvest all the pot, get all the seeds out of it, take those seeds and store them away until next May, and you smoke all that pot that you grow, and you can grow 7 plants for every person in your household. Doesn't matter their age. In the state of California, it depends on where you are. Look that stuff up. Look up when you plant, when you harvest. You start at certain times and you plant certain things, and then you harvest the seeds for next year, and you're going to find that your bill in the store is going to be far less, which means you don't have to work as hard out in the world to have the money to pay for yourself, which gives you more time to then cultivate more food, and it takes care of itself, and eventually you get off the grid. You don't need all of that. Then it's a luxury to go to a restaurant. It's a luxury to go and have certain things that you can live without. You just have to be willing to do the work that it takes. You're already working for someone anyway as a slave, and just getting enough money to just make it paying them. If you start growing your own foods, fruits, and vegetables, you're going to find that you're going to have an abundance, and you're going to start giving away things. We had a lemon tree in our front yard and our backyard. My brother and I had a house over in the San Francisco Bay Area. We had so many lemons on those 2 trees that we were giving them to our friends. We were making lemonade. We were making lemon meringue pie. We were making everything you can imagine, lemon bread, and we were giving lemons away. People were giving us apples because they had apple trees. Do you see? You start finding your friends who grow other things, and you start trading. I'll give you all these lemons. You give me some apples. You take the apples and you make applesauce out of them, or you make apple jelly out of them, or you preserve the apples. Same thing with the lemons. You make lemon jelly and you preserve the lemon. You use them for other things. You take eggs from a chicken and you take some EVOO and you rub it all over the egg on the outside and set it down inside of something. That egg will now stay for 2 years in storage as long as you're keeping it in a root cellar. 2 years. All you have to do is go in and turn them over. I do it in the refrigerator. I buy a flat of eggs. Let's say a dozen eggs, I'll put them in the refrigerator, and every 3 days I'll flip that flat over. And 3 days later, I'll come back, or a week later, and I'll flip it back over the other way, upside down, right side up. You come into my kitchen, my sister walked in. Why are your eggs upside down? Oh, this week they're upside down. Next week they're right side up. What does that do? Well, if I just leave the eggs sitting in there, they all go to the bottom and the egg shell is porous and air gets in there and the eggs will spoil. So the date that's on the eggs that you buy in the store gives you about 2 weeks and those eggs are going to go bad. If you leave them sit exactly the way they're sitting in that store for 2 weeks, the eggs are going to start going bad. If you flip those eggs over every 3 to 5 days, flip them over, flip them back, flip them over, flip them back. Those same eggs will last you 90 days minimum in the refrigerator. My sister's like, no way. She came back over. These eggs can't be good. The date on here says they were bad 3 months ago. Yeah, let's crack one open. I'm going to cook some eggs for breakfast. Let's see. Crack. These eggs are good. She started doing it. And she says, oh my God, you can keep your eggs. And I'm like, that's just by flipping them over. Because what happens is when you flip it over, the yolk goes to the part on the inside and the yolk itself seals the egg. But if you don't flip the egg over, it doesn't seal and it sits there in the top part of the egg. All of the yolk settles. And then the egg is porous because it's honeycomb. If you look at it under a microscope, it's a honeycomb. So if you take the egg and you take olive oil or any kind of oil, right, cooking oil, and you literally paint it with a paintbrush all around the outside and hold on to it with with your fingers or with a glove so you don't get oil over your hands. And you do that and set it down inside of the back end of the carton, and then flip those eggs over. I don't even do that in the refrigerator, but if you do that, that's a survival trick. Those of us who are survivalists know that. You can buy, or you have chickens and they start laying eggs and you can't give them away to your friends, which you're going to ruin. Your eggs are going to go. Not if you get some EVOO, that lasts the longest. And you paint the eggs on the outside with a good coating, and then you got to flip them over because all the oil will slowly run down. Then you got to flip it over. So if you have the carton that is made out of paper, it'll soak up into the carton. So if you get the ones that are made out of plastic, it just pools at the bottom. You flip it over and it runs back down over the egg, or you pick up the egg and you move it around again. Just by flipping it over and making sure the oil stays all over that egg, you can store those eggs for up to 2 years in a place where the temperature is somewhere between 38 and 57. 2 years, and those eggs will still be edible. Okay? But they don't want you to know that because they need you to go back to the store and buy eggs every 3 weeks. Do you understand that? So if you have chickens, all you got to do is paint those eggs and put them in a place where they don't have sunlight, and make sure that you're flipping them over back and forth every few days, and then put a date on when you put them there, right on there when you put them in there. Okay? And that way you know every time I open up the refrigerator, how long have those eggs been sitting? Screw it, flip them over anyway. Right? If I can't remember when the last time I flipped them over, I flip them over right now anyways. And I do that, and I don't have to buy eggs. I can unless I use a dozen eggs in a week, then I need more eggs. You have chickens and they're giving you too many eggs and you can't give them to your friends, preserve them. Start doing more things with egg, right? But that's the secret. You have to do the same thing with your fruits and vegetables. Can that stuff, get them into the pressure cookers, and then put them in a root cellar someplace that's secured so people can't just break in and steal all your shit. Okay? Store that stuff. Start canning your own things. Start making pickle stuff. You can keep pickles in the refrigerator and say, oh, these pickles are going to go bad. You can keep it in the pickle and same thing. Mix it up, set it back down. That pickle juice is preserving. That's why people pickled things. It preserves it. Okay? If you get cramps, here's another little tidbit. This is all in my book that nobody wants to buy, right? Literally, if you get cramps in the middle of the night when you're sleeping, go and drink pickle juice. They'll go away instantly. My ex-wife didn't believe me, and she had horrible cramps. She would get in her calves, and I'm like, her nickname is Pickles. She had like 15, 20 pickle jars in the refrigerator, every kind of pickle. She loves them, still does. I'm like, you got pickles in there. Go and take a swig of pickle juice. That is not a thing. She didn't believe me, and must have taken 6 months of her going through this. And she didn't have cramps every day, but whenever it was her time, she had cramps. And I would go, she'd get up and, what are you doing? She's like, oh my God, I have cramps again. I have cramps in my girl parts and in my legs. And I'm like, go and drink some pickle juice. After about 6 months of me saying that to her, she went, okay, you know what? Fuck it. What do I have to lose? I know that you can't be fucking right. That's not a thing. I would have heard about it. She walked into the refrigerator. I heard her take a pickle juice jar out. I heard her open it up. She took a couple of drinks of it. Less than 30 seconds later, she comes walking back in and goes, are you fucking kidding me? Why did it act that fast? I said, you got it in your mouth and you get it under your tongue and you swish it around. It's just like taking a freaking, somebody's got a heart problem and they put a thing under their tongue. You get it in there. That pickling spice is going to get rid of your cramps. She had cramps. If you work your ass off during the day and you're low on potassium and salt and water, you're going to get cramps. Pickle juice is high in electrolytes. Superfood of electrolytes. Okay? Go and take a swig of pickle juice. Your cramps are going to go away in seconds. Simple little things. There was a guy that wrote a book that got sued, but it was called All the Wives' Cures or Ancient Cures They Don't Want You to Know About or something like that. It was 20, 30 years ago. He sold millions of the books, but then people were suing him because he was saying that these things were the cure for different things. So he had to say, in my opinion. But what he did was he took all the wives' tales and all the stuff from grandma and grandpa, great-grandma and great-grandpa, all the things that everybody said, and he wrote them all down. And he looked them all up and heard all the stories that everybody said about all these home remedies they don't want you to know about. I don't even know if you can get the book anymore. I don't have a copy of it. But literally, it was all of these stories of survival and the things that no one knows about anymore. Like when you get indigestion. Indigestion literally means indigestion. Means your body is not digesting. So you either have two things going on. Either you have too much acid and you have acid reflux and you're burping up acid into your mouth, or you don't have enough acid. So what happens is everyone's like, I need to take an antacid because I have heartburn. I have indigestion. What that does is you take something and it kills all the acid in your stomach completely. Then your body starts pumping acid in there. Okay. And that's how it goes away. The truth is you don't need to kill all the acid so your body turns on the acid creation in your system. You just need more acid. Unless you have too much acid and then you have acid reflux, which means you have GERD, that's what they used to call it, to where you're burping up acid. Oh my God, that was stomach acid. I just got in my throat and burned my throat. Okay, then you have too much acid. Now you need to nullify the acid. You don't need to take it. What you need to take is calcium. You can buy an acid that's 100% calcium. Calcium dissolves acid. Okay, you can lower the acid amount in a safe way. But I give you this Prilosec, which blocks the acid receptors in your body. Well, that only works if you have too much acid. If you don't have too much acid, doing that means your food's not digesting because there's no acid in there. So you just go and get a vinegar and take a tablespoon or a teaspoon of vinegar and drink that, and that's acidic. Gets into your body, and all of a sudden you can digest your food, and your indigestion goes away. These are small things that you learn about yourself. Well, if you get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and open your mouth and look at your tongue. First thing you do when you first wake up, walk into the bathroom and look at your tongue. If your tongue has a white film on it, you have too much acid and you have acid reflux. That's what happens. Your tongue turns white. White film. You don't have white film and you think you have indigestion, it's because you don't have enough acid. So you're either eating too much acid or not eating enough. And that's why your food is not digesting. You need to become more aware of these things and figure these out. Be the adult and figure these out. I know you guys are probably making comments and I don't have my glasses on, so I'm probably not able to answer any of that. Almonds and bananas. Now I look up, first thing I see is Cassie. Almonds and bananas also instantly help indigestion. Bang! That was perfect timing, Cassie. Thank you. Right? GERD, Rick says. Reflux is right. That's what a lot of people call it GERD. That's acid reflux. That's too much acid. And the GERD is when it comes up, right? So literally, yeah. And then you get it esophagus, you get it in the esophagus and it burns your esophagus, right? And then it burns the esophagus sphincter, which is what Rick is saying. And that hurts. It's that trap door in the esophagus that's supposed to keep your food down. It comes up and it burns that. That sucks when that happens. I used to have acid reflux and the doctors wanted me to take drugs. And I was like, no, I need to figure out why I have too much acid. I'm consuming too much acid. So I need to change my diet and stop consuming so much acid. Guess what? Acid reflux went away. Most of it was because I was drinking alcohol and eating food and carbs. And so I was having too much acid in my body. I stopped drinking alcohol and most of my problems went away. No longer diabetic, all kinds of shit went away. No longer type 2 diabetic. Getting rid of the alcohol, no inflammation, no swelling of the joints in the body, and then not eating too many carbs and too much crap that was causing acid. And then my body would be soaking up the food I would eat, would soak up the alcohol, and the alcohol would stay in my system longer and do more damage to my body. So you got to figure out what is it that I'm doing that's causing the problem. You have to be honest with yourself and do the shadow work, right? So yeah, GERD sucks to have that, right? I have to find it, right? Penny said, yeah, you got to look up. You got to look up what it is that's happening to you. You got to look up the different books that are out there, the different things. They're all online, man. You have a computer or a smartphone in your hand. You have the total knowledge of the human race in your hand, and you're not using it for anything besides big tits, nice bod, great abs. That guy's got a six-pack. Look at that winky. Okay? You're using it as a drug, which is what they want you to do. And you're not using it in any way to better yourself. Full knowledge of the entire human race is at your disposal that you carry in your hand 24 hours a day. And you're like, I'm living in the middle of nowhere and I have no idea how to figure this out. You're talking to me on a cell phone or a computer right now. You have the encyclopedia and the history of the earth. You have every single person's skill set from the entire planet on how they're living where they're at currently in every climate on the earth and how to survive there. They're all making videos. They're on TikTok, they're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook. They're all over the world, whatever apps that you're on. To survive in every climate, all you got to do is start Googling that shit and look that up, or go onto the app that you're on, that's your favorite app, and stop looking at TNA and kittens and laughing about that, and be more serious about solving your own problems. This is the truth. It's the hard truth. I was never more glad in my life when they invented computers, never more glad in my life when they invented smartphones. Because everything that is out there for the world is literally wherever I'm sitting. If I have my phone with me and I have access to the internet, I'm never bored, because I don't sit around looking at, oh, that was cool, that guy fell over, and look at all the fail things, although that's fun to do sometimes too. Love that shit. And you know that because I send them to you, right? Most of you that are friends with me, you know that because I'm sending you funny shit. That's not all I look at. That's just when I'm about ready to go to bed and I'm flipping. Fuck, I'm going to send that to my friends. Oh my God, that was hilarious. You know what I mean? That's why you get shit from me late at night. Those of you who are in Europe, it's way in the fucking 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Those of you who are in the United States, it's usually 1 or 2 in the morning as well, right? But that's when I'm winding down and I'm doing mindless shit. The rest of my days, I'm online and I'm looking shit up. Things that actually are going to benefit myself and the rest of the world. So if the world gets shitty out from under me, I'm going to be okay. But I'm concerned with all y'all. Okay? And it's getting shittier until we take control and get the control back from the controllers. It's going to continue to get, unless it winds down into a third world war or it's fixed, and you need to be careful. So you need to worry about these things. And some of you are already starting to have a hard time surviving, and you know who you are. You're out there and you're talking about it and you're worried, and it scares you and you don't know what to do. Be proactive and start learning. Learn how to forage so that you don't have to have as much money. Learn how to then plan ahead. There's almanacs out there, Farmer's Almanac. Write this down. The Farmer's Almanac. If you are in the North American continent, wherever you are in the world, I'm sure they have them. But I'm in North America, so I know that. The Farmer's Almanac will tell you what to plant, when, in every region of the United States, and when to harvest it, and how to take care of it. The Witch's Almanac will do the same. That's another book that you should get. Then you should look into foraging for wild edibles. You should look at one of these survival books that, like the one I was just telling you, the Lost Ways is one. Those people should be paying me money as much as I'm giving them a commercial. And there's another one that's really big right now that I was thinking about buying just so that I had it, so that I could reference it as well. That's on Instagram and TikTok and all over the place. And I haven't bought it. Usually I buy these things. This is what I do. I'm stupid that way. I buy things just to see what they have different from what I know, because I don't think I know everything. Never do I think I know everything about anything. So I go, what is it? What am I going to learn from them? Oh man, holy crap. I never thought of that. So, if the world gets shitty, yeah, am I going to be packing 4 or 5 or 6 books around? Yeah. But I'm the guy that's going to be able to build a fucking log cabin. I'm going to be able to make my own lean-to. I'm going to be able to skin animals. I'm going to be able to kill animals. I'm going to be able to catch animals. I'm going to be able to plant my own crops. I'm going to be able to survive because I have this knowledge. And if I die and someone finds that knowledge, then they're going to go, well, what didn't he do that was in this book that got him killed? Oh, a bear mauled him. Okay, got to make sure we don't get killed by a bear, but here's all the knowledge. If you don't have that and the world does get shitty and you find yourself homeless or out in the world and you don't know how you're going to survive, you're going to wish you fucking had those resources. You have a cell phone that gives you those resources. You don't even have to buy the books if you don't have the money. You can start looking that shit up and watch videos that'll tell you the same thing to make your life easier now so that you can save some money to buy the books, to read the books, to reference them. Or you can get a hold of somebody like me that can give you the information and help you. Do these things ahead of time and hope you never, ever need them. But if some catastrophe happens, an earthquake, a fire, a flood, whatever, some catastrophe happens wherever you are in the world, hurricane, tidal wave, tornado, whatever, you're going to wish you had these skills. And you're going to go, what the fuck am I going to do now? Everything I own is gone. How do I live? If you had read these books, you'll go, all right, well, I know how to make a lean-to. I know how to make a tent. I know how to fish. I don't even need a fishing pole. I know how to forage to get a fishing pole, to make one, to fish. I know how to make a pike to stab a boar or a deer or something. I know how to make a trap in the ground. I know how to do these things to get myself to stay alive long enough, find water, find food, to stay alive long enough to find civilization again, to get help. If that's all you need it for. Okay. But in the meantime, say the world doesn't get shitty, it's getting shitty, and our money isn't going as far. So there are things you can do now that you can help feed yourself and your family without having to go to the store, that you can get from the store and start planting to grow your own food, to help sustain yourself so that you don't have to pay so much money at the store. There's ways of making electricity with solar panels and little wind turbines that you can get on the cheap or learn how to make yourself by Googling that shit. When you got time and you got nothing else to do and you're sitting around and you're smoking pot or you're drinking or you're talking to your friends or you're flipping on TikTok or whatever, that's when you should be going, how do I feed my family? How do I survive? How do I gut a deer? There's a bunch of squirrels running around out here and I'm fucking hungry. How do I kill a trap and kill a squirrel and cook a squirrel and eat it? Because if you do that and you all of a sudden you're not paying $400, $500 a month at food from Walmart or Target or wherever you're going to get food, and you're only spending $200, that's another $300 that you don't have to spend that you have in your pocket now. You can buy a solar panel and a battery to plug into. Do you see? You have to be proactive and change where you spend your money to make yourself more efficient. And the more efficient you make yourself, the less money you have to give to other people for your survival. And then you can buy the things you want to buy instead of the things you have to buy. And you need less and less cash to take care of these things because it becomes cyclical and it's renewable. A new renewable resource is going to continue to feed you. That's why thousands of years ago, 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, if you give a man a fish, you teach him to beg. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for his whole life. Do you understand that? Learn how to fish and you can feed yourself forever as long as you can go fishing. Not knowing how to fish or how to hunt or how to plant food means you're relying upon the store for it. That means you have to have money. That means you have to go to work for somebody else for a low amount of money so that you can pay somebody else who's growing the food for you to be able to eat it. Cut that middle guy out. Start growing your own food. You won't have to pay them for it. Learn that now when you don't have to. Learn how to keep the animals from eating your food and the bugs from eating your food and the aphids and all that. Learn that now. And then you'll find that it's going to lower your cost anyways. And then you're going to be happier because you're going to be doing something on your off time, and you won't have to work as much for somebody else. And you'll find that again, like I said before, that gives you the time to work for yourself, to feed yourself and your family. Teach your kids that too. And they'll do that, and they'll continue, and they'll realize, why should I pay all my money, go to a restaurant or go to a work for a company 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week to make money to go to the store when I can grow the food in my backyard and just have to go out and water the plants and keep all the bugs out and the weeds out of it every day and check on it. And I can feed my entire family for a whole year off just what's here, and I don't have to spend all that $500 a pop at the store. You'll find that you'll be less reliant on them. And guess what'll happen? Everything in the stores will become worth less money because there's not as many people buying it. So they have to lower the price because now the demand has gone down and the supply is too high. And they'll start charging less. And guess what? That's a win-win. All right, guys. I love you. I got to go. My mother's taking off her shoes for whatever reason. She's probably has peed herself and she's thinking about getting her diaper off. So I better go find out. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night. And if you guys tuned in today to hear, and if you're still here, then you are okay with what I was talking about. But if you turned in to hear the Law of One, and I ended up talking survival all day today, it's something that should be on everybody's mind around the world right now, because right now, if you're not already doing it, then you're a slave to getting food, and they know it, and they're taking advantage of that. So augment that and cut them out. You'll see how quickly they respond by either trying to change the laws so you can't fucking do that, or lower the prices. And they're going to lower the prices first, and then they're going to start trying to change the laws. And if you're aware of that and they try to change the laws and you don't let them do it, and then vote out those people who are trying to change those laws, you're going to find that the world is going to change. So you got to make changes, right? Okay, so have a great day. Tune in Sunday, my Sunday, 2 days from now, 5 p.m. West Coast America time to broadcast Team Alpha on YouTube. I'll put the link up on Facebook and on Orion Rising at 5 p.m. I did an interview on Monday that's going to air on Sunday, this coming 2 days from now, talking about the Law of One and Ascension. And my book is still in production. I don't know when it's going to be out. I'm going to contact my publisher in the next, probably Monday or Tuesday, and find out what the hell's going on with that. So I can get the cover and get the damn thing printed to get it out to you guys. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. But I will be in the chat on Sunday to answer questions and talk to you guys, anybody who shows up. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week, and we will talk about the Law of One. I love you guys. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. Hopefully I see you on Sunday in the chat. If not, I'll see you next week on Friday. And then on Saturday, we're doing a workshop on the 15th. So if I don't see you on Friday for the Law of One, there's links to that on my Facebook page as well. Aaron and his wife are putting on this workshop that I'll be speaking at next week on Saturday, the 15th of June. And that's a paid workshop. I think it's either $10 or $12 or something like that. Don't quote me on the price. Depends on where in the world you are. But that's going to be an all day, 5 or 6 hour, and that's going to be embracing your true higher self. And we're going to walk you through that in various stages from different people, explaining ascension and how to get in contact with your higher self, becoming the higher self, and embracing that. So it's going to be a cool workshop for the day on Saturday. So tune in on Saturday. Links are up on my page for that as well. If not, Aaron Fowler or his wife, you can go and look at theirs. And the links are there for that if you guys want to get involved in that. And if you don't think you need any of that, that's okay too. So I'll either see you on Sunday, I'll see you on Friday, or I'll see you on Saturday, or I'll see you all those days, right? All right. I love you guys. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Like I said, see you on Sunday.